is 6:15, and I am going to formally open and call to order the November 9th, 2022 open session meeting of the Ayer Planning Board. The first action item is to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the agenda?
Yes.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it is unanimous. Do we have any covenant of bond releases to discuss this evening?
Not this evening.
Good. So the first item we have is 22 Fitchburg Road. Are there representatives of the developer here? I believe there are.
And the owner's here too.
And the owners here. So if the representative will come up, identify yourself, and walk us through, please.
Sure. My name is Mika Pasala. I'm from S. Chamberlain Engineering. And also the owner applicant is here as well, Paul DiGeronimo and Laura O'Kane from Geronimo Properties in Leominster. And hopefully I'll pull up some plans. We're seeking site plan modification to a site plan that was approved in 2017. And I will open up, this is what was previously approved. Actually, you know what, go back, I clicked the wrong one. I'm going to do the colored sheet because it's a little bit clearer to see. This is a split view of the proposed project as of 2017 rather. This is the existing building, and we've proposed a 4-unit addition, a freestanding retail business, and another freestanding coffee shop. And currently, if you guys have driven through here, this is the advanced auto. That was what was intended with this plan to go there. Subsequently, after we got the planning board approval and zoning board approval with the economy and various, Paul knows the details more than I do, they walked and kind of shelved their project. So now they were left with a project that they permitted. And over the last several years, we've been keeping the permits alive, both the special permit and the site plan review. So subsequent to that, as this is kind of sat, we've gone through various renditions of what can we do with this property, since they walked. And one of the things that Paul had looked at, he really didn't like how this curb cut was here in position with the rest of the plaza and the flow. So he said, hey, can we change this curb cut location to here? I said, well, we can do that. However, that requires Mass DOT approval. So January of this year, we reached out to Mass DOT, and this is what we had supplied to them. January. This isn't colored, but we had moved the curb cut location here, left the building, left the auto parts, and left the addition location. Well, they came back to us with basically a huge laundry list of improvements they wanted done along here, and we started looking at it and got a little gun shy with what they were asking us to do. So I said, well, can we go back to the original proposal? So we did that. They said, well, that's fine. However, we need to show it without the drive-through building. And the reason that is there's an existing drain line that cuts through this property and ties across here. They wanted us to address this drain line that's going through prior to doing anything allowed with this drive-through building. And that's why we approached the board, and kind of administratively, can we phase this project? Since we started, Advanced Auto came back in the picture, they wanted this location, can we get this moving, build this portion of the project, put that on hold until we resolve our issues with Mass DOT. And Mass DOT wanted to see it specifically on a separate plan. They wouldn't allow us to just X out building not to be built at a later date. They wanted a separate plan, and that's the plan that we presented to you. And that's what this plan is here.
This plan tonight, you mean?
Yeah, well, this is the phased one that.
Phase one was this one.
Yeah, yes, this is the phase one that we have. I'm just kind of giving a backstory because Member Diskin and Member Tilson, they were part of that discussion.
Does phase
About-
one include the retail stores to the side of Shop and Save?
Phase one was for this side, yes.
Okay. Is
So,
that in progress now?
yes, that's being constructed right now. This portion of it is being constructed.
Not the strip area.
That's what I'm wondering.
The strip area is not under construction.
It's not under construction now, but that's considered part of the phase one of
Correct.
this plan? Okay, good.
Because part of this phase, the original design had a sewer line coming really close to this building, and the future tenant, as well as the owner and the abutter, were concerned with the proximity, so we had to go into negotiations in the spring with relocating the sewer easement, and that was part of the amendment to the sewer connection. And while we were doing it, we also previously had the sewer internally connected, but once they started looking at how the plumbing was in this building, it was decided we're better off just to run it outside the building. It just makes it neater and cleaner. During that process, when we were out here, the geotechnical wanted additional testing out here, and also Mass DOT wanted us to prove to them that we were able to discharge these existing catch basins somewhere on our property. That if you guys have room, you have over an acre that's not developed, put it there. Well, we went out, did some soil testing and proved, and lo and behold, the water table in the back was even higher than we had anticipated, requiring us to make some augmentations to the shape of this stormwater basin. And it was timed with when we were negotiating with the sewer next door, and they were raising concerns with ponding that they were having on a low spot, which we were aware of, but that ended up being a contentious point with the neighbor. So we redesigned the bottom of this basin, presented it to portions of the board, to the DPW, had them review it, and they were acceptable with the stormwater basin as we had done it. But to make it fit, we had to knock one section off of this, of the addition. That's kind of the now I'm gonna go to
So
what
that's
you.
3 units rather than 4?
Correct.
Okay.
So where we are today, this is what the modification that we have before you now. It's that same stormwater basin I was just pointing at, the same sewer line, but we are permitting this curb cut change and then the parking configuration, because when we did this in 2017, there was the 2009 zoning, and the parking dimensions, parking setbacks, all your landscaping requirements, all those were different. And even the board members of which boards were, this had a mix of a zoning board approval and a planning board approval. Those are now under your purview for site plan. So this curb cut location, Mass DOT did not allow us to have the sidewalk. Previously, the sidewalk was shown on our side, on our property, on the locust property. They wanted us to continue that sidewalk in the same fashion that currently was added in front of the Ayer Motor Inn, and that is right on the edge of pavement. So that resulted in the introduction of additional curbing, and it also requires retrofitting. There's existing drainage structures, utilities here. There's an existing catch basin located here. We now need to retrofit that, convert it into a manhole, and have a curb inlet offset going in along here. Now, Mass DOT isn't requiring the sidewalk, but they said if you provide a sidewalk, it must be in our right-of-way and not on your property. If it's on the applicant's property, it's a long-winded process to get approval. To get an easement and cross-cutting easements. They do not want people to walk down their sidewalk and then come onto an abutting piece of property and then back onto the right-of-way.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Since most of the discussion is going to be down towards the road, can you blow that up, make it, magnify it, make it bigger?
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. And now just move us back to where the discussion is. Thank you.
Oh,
And you
hallelujah.
say,
Okay, sure.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, Mika, you said you mean DOT doesn't want us, private property, DOT property,
They wanna
private
go
property, is that what
home
you're
like
saying?
this.
Correct. And
Got it,
that's
I just want to be clear on what you were just explaining, thank you.
Exactly.
Got it.
And they got kind of contentious with Mass DOT in January because their previous how they had operated, if we were completely, our work was out of the right of way, they typically didn't have an issue with it. Well, they've kind of had a change of heart and change of mindset and change of staff of how they view that. And that was why they're like, nope, if you got a sidewalk there, it has to be in our right of way since our other sidewalk is there.
Okay, so excuse me just a second. I'm not gonna touch it. So the sidewalk we're talking about that was built a couple of years ago is right here.
It ends right
It ends
there.
right here, and now I can
Yes.
see it says bituminous concrete walk.
Yes.
So we're talking about this now being continued.
Yeah, I'm
It's on the
continuing.
next print, I think, that you show it.
No, it's right here. It continues right to here. The R is the ramp and there's a
Okay, now I
landing.
see it, okay. So
Yeah.
This dark line is your property line with that circle and
Yes.
square on it.
Yes.
This is the catch basin, you're now gonna have to move it out.
Yeah, the
From
existing
here to
catch
here.
basin, yeah, it's
Got it. Okay.
getting shifted over. There's a gate valve here,
Okay.
where the existing hydrant is. Yeah, so now what we've done on this plan is show the density of what the landscaping is required for the town. And we've augmented the parking spaces from 10 by 20, which was the previous, to now 9 by 18. Since we had to put the sidewalk here, we're like, okay, let's balance this out from an aesthetic perspective with the centering of the site. So we're going to put a crosswalk painted through the center of the property. And that really corresponds, I'm going to shift over because
I got a
the
question.
grade,
Yeah.
you can see that there's a high point pretty much running. These are the contour lines here.
Okay.
And here, so there's a bowl right here and there's a bowl right here in the parking lot, which those two catch basins connect to. Now, consequently, with changing the parking shape, the parking grid, and the parking spaces changing, now that affects the positioning of the poles. Currently, there's an existing light pole here. There's an existing light pole here. There's one. Let's see here.
It's in there somewhere.
It's
We know
It's-
it's
I'm
there.
sorry.
We know.
yeah, it's right here.
Yeah.
And then right in that area, yeah, right there. So here we're proposing to put new light poles lined up with how the parking grid's going to be. And right here and right here. Being cognizant of, there's a sewer easement that comes through here, and also the town has a sewer easement that goes along here, the main trunk line, and there's
Yeah.
overhead wires and power and utilities going through there. So there's kind of spaghetti of utilities going through the property. So with the sidewalk, we would, and this is another, with Mass DOT did not want a radii.
I was just gonna ask you that. They
They-
don't want a radius there?
They did not want a 30-foot radius. They said this is their preferred layout.
That's not cool.
That's how they, that's.
What
their-
about trucks and stuff like that?
Well, it's a 30-foot, this is sloped. There's gonna be a transition detail, and you see how they do all their, throughout the state. You'll see that they ramp down, and that's how they want it.
So you're telling me that a long tractor trailer with a delivery can come out of that and make a radius on the highway with
Yeah.
that sharp 90, almost a 90 there? I'm talking about this right here.
I think, Ken, if I may make it, Mr. Chair, the LL, that's slope bituminous down to the
Yes.
level. of
That's for
so
the sidewalk.
That's the sidewalk, so the
It's
truck can roll over the sidewalk without damaging it.
Doesn't-
I'm seeing it in other places with the advocacy work, yeah. DOT's made some changes.
Yeah, so previously, there was 30-foot radii, and that's what we had, and they're like, no, we don't want to see that.
Wow.
Can't turn south.
Well, the good thing is it is fairly wide, as a lot of the streets in Ayer. This is a very wide street, so.
And are they required, sorry.
It's a quick question. Will you be repaving the parking lot as part of this overall project or no?
It will be once we get, it's being done in steps and
Okay.
phases. And it's in
It's a
sorry
quick
need
patch.
of, it needs to be redone. And that's kind of they were hoping to actually do it this year. That was kind of what really started. Let's get our
The
ducks in a
plan
row.
is to repave the parking lot next season, change the exterior lights.
That's
So we are focused to do that actually next July.
Okay, thank you.
Wow, excellent.
Yeah, you've lost the season this year.
Yep.
Did they, excuse me,
UPS Auto Parts being done this week.
did the Mass DOT require you to put in vertical granite curb or anything as you meet the road?
Match what they have, because right now they're doing bituminous. So match the curbing. On the site, once we get in here, we're doing granite within the site. But we're matching what they have here, their big curb and sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and they went out and that was a pushback. They initially wanted us to do granite, but then they were, I'm like, it's bituminous. Oh, and then there was some back and forth. Oh, because they were just looking at, when you look at Google Street View, it looks like it was granite curbing, and I'm like, no, it's not. So some pushback on that. Yep.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna keep going, I was gonna ask some questions at the building, but we're down in the front for now.
So currently, actually, I'm going to slide over to the other view. It's just shows the utilities. These are the changes that Mass DOT wanted us to do. They wanted us to retrofit these existing catch basins that are out here with sumps. And actually, the structural integrity of them, that's starting to,
It's unhappy too.
yeah. What was that?
Who knows?
Start again.
At least it's not talking to us.
I don't know what that was.
New Acrobat feature.
I don't know what that was.
Yeah, who knows?
So where was that? It was supposed to be.
The retrofit on the,
Tell you, you're not gonna be able to get in either place.
the sumps, you're adding sumps and retrofitting.
Yeah, yes.
catch basins.
Thank you.
Impossible.
There's a catch basin here and here, which we're retrofitting, adding a deep sump. They had us go through their litany of various LID options and all the permutations of what can be done. And based on the elevation of the site where the groundwater table is at on that property, it's very flat, very shallow. Implementing all the LID techniques is really, you really can't do it. But what you can do is reduce pavement, which we've done, and introduce the deep sumps with the oil and sediment traps.
Separators.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, who's they again?
the
LID.
DOT. I'm referring to DOT.
It's still DOT?
Yeah, yeah, still
Okay,
yeah,
even
that-
though we're inside, okay.
Yeah, DOT, because we are tying into their system.
Yeah.
Any drain, this drainage connection's cutting across and tying into their
Sure.
system.
Okay.
So what we had to was satisfy DOT's requirements for making a drain. We had to apply for a separate permit for that explicitly, and it runs with the property.
Yeah.
And it's going to be recorded and be basically part of their deed.
Yeah.
When title's done, that drain can exist. So that's separate from the actual curb cut application, but we made all the improvements onto one plan. They thought that would be best to just have everything that we're proposing to do on one plan.
And so they're asking you to put sumps in, gas oil separators in the sumps.
Yes.
So you're introducing the cleanest water you can off the property
Yes.
into their system, and they probably gave you a maintenance.
Yeah, there's going to
Yeah,
be,
does
there'll be
their
their,
maintenance, yeah, okay.
Bec-
And then
because their MS4 permitting and their EPA standards, and that's,
Yep.
and one of the things that, yeah, so they were satisfied with that. We went through the various options. There was some back and forth on what could be done, and we showed how much pavement we've reduced, and they were satisfied that. And even implementing additional structures out there, like storm scepters or oil water separators, the problem is the height of the structure, and actually to get it to physically fit. And even these structures, we had to raise the grade a few inches just to get a retrofitted precast structure put in, because when this was built in the 50s, it's probably barrel block.
They
Yeah.
paved it as they left. I'm sorry.
Yes. So, getting a modern precast structure and frame and grate, so we had to raise it a couple inches, but really we're limited in ultimately the final discharge point, how much we can raise the site.
Are you executing that work now in phase one? We just talked about the drainage improvements. Or do you have to wait for phase, can you? are you
Phase
waiting-
phase two is what we have here with, we'll be changing these grates, and repairing these structures with the deep sumps.
Okay,
The portion in the back that's under construction or the basin's been built, that's that phase one.
right. But not this, what you just described, the requirements to change those.
Yeah, and the DOT was satisfied with the basin in the back that it does not impose anything, nor would it be a benefit to them for dealing with with the drainage issues and the drainage woes that we have on the site and the surrounding area.
Can you just take us over to the slide that shows the retention or detention basin on the,
Yep.
by the auto parts store? Because I'm looking at the drain line that you just, so obviously that drain line is low to that work. Because it goes right across, in the other drawing, it went right across that.
Yeah, it's going right here. There's a little hump there. That's to cover that pipe. Everything is shallow.
Okay, so
And
that's
that-
why that high point is in the middle of the, I was curious
That's
about
correct.
that.
And it's very shallow, and what that area is doing is basically just catching the roof runoff
Yeah, okay.
in the front. In the back, all the parking lot and the pavement is sheet flowing to the back.
Yeah.
Okay, so that connection where it says RD up on the back is the roof drain coming into that.
Yeah, so this is...
Okay.
And thankfully, initially, the older information we had, this used to be a clay pipe. And over the years, yeah, so that's another reason we were really concerned. Well, when we went out to do some measurements and we realized that it's actually a cast iron pipe. So it's really shallow, but from here is a cast iron. So that gave me a little bit more comfort that, okay, we're not gonna crush that pipe as we're putting that building in. And that was one of our concerns.
Can I ask a question about the back of the property?
Yep.
As I recall, when you guys were here way back when, one of the things we had talked about was snow storage and stuff during that very short winters we're now going to have not a lot of snow.
Yep.
But I don't recall what it was back there, but you're still maintaining area back there as was requested before for snow
Yeah.
storage and stuff like that?
Yeah. And we have, and usually what they end up doing is leaving areas that are, as they plow, we have more parking than you need, so that usually they sacrifice some parking areas.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious because if I recall, that back right-hand corner, if you will, was the area that was selected for snow storage in the original plans.
Yep.
We talked about it. Okay. So nothing you're doing is going to impact that.
No, you can,
You're not putting any fences and stuff like that.
no.
Okay. Thank you.
Should I go?
Is he complete, Mr. Cooper?
Yeah,
So-
yeah, did you have more? Or?
No, we've, and I saw the memo that Mark had prepared would kind of summarize the before and after from 2017 to today, the 2009 zoning to the 2019 zoning with the impervious coverage, open space, parking, and the parking is a range. Previously, we had 166 parking spaces. We have 169 right now, so we have 3 more than before, but again, they're smaller spaces, so I mean, that really accounts for that. And our overall pavement footprint is less than before, based on even just in here, by the stormwater basin becoming larger, and then just the landscaping and how we did this curb cut here. This is all pavement today, so that'll be all landscaped and less runoff into their drainage system, which they were happy about, that were introduced, because it's a sandy material in the area, so really conducive for a recharge.
Okay, Mr. Chair? Yes, please. A little bit of process. First step would be, of course, for the planning board to accept the application package for consideration. The checklist is right in the packet I sent, very thorough, as they always do. And yeah, so I recommend acceptance of the application for consideration first. And then we have two potential waiver requests that they made, one of which may now be moot, which I will get to after the acceptance motion. And then also recommendations from Dan Van Scalquick,
Yep.
DPW Director, that may affect the outcome here on the conditions.
Mr. Chair, if you want to move to accept the plans as presented?
Excellent. Do I have a second?
Or, I'm sorry, I don't have the piece of
I've
paper
got
in
it.
front of me, so I can't give you the actual address. I think it's,
22.
22.
Site
22
plan,
Fitchburg Road,
site plan
yeah.
approval modification.
I'm sorry?
Site plan approval
Yeah, thank you. I don't
modification.
have, I left my copy at home.
22 Fitchburg Road.
I printed it up, but I left it behind with my notes on it, so,
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
thank you, Mr. Disco.
Any discussion? Hearing none, move to, yes, sir.
Go ahead, sorry.
Discussion? No? Hearing none, move to vote.
Wait a minute, this is a public hearing, isn't it?
This is
This
just
is just
to,
to
No,
accept
this
the
is
plan,
just
not to
yeah, yeah,
approve.
this is just to
I
accept
have one
it.
question when you have public
Oh,
hearing.
Yeah, yeah.
Mr. Chair, can I just acknowledge that I think Ken went to do the same thing and I went to do the same thing that Ms. Withy also just did. So we're all on the same page that we are
Okay.
now accepting the
Yeah,
plan.
we're not approving.
Maybe
not
you do.
approving,
I'm
just
sorry,
accepting.
on my head.
Not approving it.
All in
I was
favor?
with you.
Aye.
Yes.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous to accept the plan. Now,
I will just put the two waiver requests out there since one of them was a little bit confusing, but the first request that was made was to allow light poles 30 feet tall versus the maximum 15 feet that is in the bylaw now. But it was determined that one reason I didn't spot this right away is something we have to fix in the bylaw later, is to get all the lighting stuff in one place. It's actually section 9.3C3
You're right.
that talks about that. And in further discussion with the applicant's engineer, it was determined that the original light fixtures were installed in 1958. So that's before I was born. So back then, there was no regulation of height, so it's my opinion that the waiver for that is not required. Though the planning board should look at the photometric lighting plan that was submitted, which shows cutoff lighting, and they do meet the criteria of not having spillover onto the
That's right.
adjoining properties according to the study.
and our town director of DPW has looked at the photometric plan and said,
I believe he has. Well, I also called the lighting expert that was, the person who was hired to do the lighting plan, and I asked him questions. He mentioned that it's important to tilt the actual light fixture, to get that effect. And here's actually, if you turn around, here's the
That's the
an
proposed.
illustration of the photometric, but the photometric plan itself.
Yeah, this is probably one. This is the photometric with the dots
Yeah.
per the foot candles
shows-
that you
yeah.
have. This is just to seem to clear. We have 4 30-foot light poles here, and we're looking to reposition them basically. And then that was only, well, it's technically a waiver to do that. The other poles in the property would be 15 foot on the edges, but replacing the existing the tall poles with LED, and then the poles that are out there now, again, you can see the bulb, just the style of fixture. The current lighting, it's more shielded, more directed down, so you're not getting the off.
right, so it will be dark sky
Yeah,
compliant.
correct, yeah.
So the only issue is 15 feet versus 30 feet. 30 feet is where it currently is. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr.
And-
Chair.
Yes, please.
So you just said you're going to reuse the poles, but you're going to change the fixture heads, basically, that's what's going on, right? The lighting heads themselves, or you're just going to convert them to LED?
Well, I think you'd want to, there's over 60-year-old
So
poles.
everything's getting changed?
They're going to get changed,
But I
correct.
thought you said reposition the poles, but I guess you didn't.
Reposition where the lighting poles are located.
got it.
The base is, that's going to be scrapped.
So it's all new stuff?
It's going to be new, but it's going to be matching the existing height.
Yeah, got it, thank you. And there's 4, part of your discussion was the fact that there's 4 light heads on each one of those poles, right?
Correct. And now
Distributing
they're
the
not-
light,
Yeah, now they're going to be with the LED, with the light panel, there's going to be double heads.
okay. Thanks.
So it's actually a reduction in actual light heads, but just the efficiency of the light.
So those are gonna, what we're seeing there now is only 2?
Double heads, yes. This is showing the lighting, it's not showing the lighting that goes around.
Right.
There's going to be wall packs, yeah,
Wall
storefront
packs
lighting.
and stuff.
This is the
Wall,
lighting.
yeah, shielded down wall packs, and it doesn't show the grocery
Yeah.
stores.
With the glass front.
Yes.
The whole thing.
Yeah, so this is just to kind of give you an idea what the new lighting will give. It's not a
That's what the
complete
lighting-
picture.
Yeah, these are the new structures, is basically what it
Yes,
comes down to.
exactly.
Yep. And just showing what the new proposed poles will do for electric.
Yeah, correct. So that's what we have here.
And the second waiver request was from the air stormwater regulations, as stormwater is being permitted with Mass DOT. And, I believe back in 2017, the stormwater was reviewed as part of the original site plan approval. So the director of DPW's comments on this. Number 2 in his letter of November 3rd, we do not have any issues with the stormwater design. Calculations appear adequate. The stormwater design is an improvement from the original design, and there's a permitted discharge to Mass DOT storm drain system. So I spoke with Dan, and he believed that, given that this is a modification to an existing plan and the fact that it meets the DOT requirements, that he doesn't need to file a new stormwater permit application.
Okay.
So those were the 2 requested waivers, the first of which for the lighting, I believe, is moot due to the age, and the second would be for the stormwater plan.
Mood or not,
Yeah, we still have to make.
even though it seems to be a pre-existing non-conforming use of the lights, I'd like to make it clear that it's okay with the board, if it's okay with everybody
Okay.
here.
Right,
So I would
right.
move to accept the waiver request for the height of the 4 poles in the center portion of the plan, to be allowed to be 30 feet tall.
Second,
Discussion.
I think it's evident that the new design, a lot of effort was put into it, and it looks to be a substantial improvement over what's there, so I think that's an endorsement that we should grant the waiver.
Any public comment?
Well, we
sorry.
should go to the second one first, the stormwater.
On
And
the lights, though.
Oh, are we going to do one?
Well, for the waivers. Oh, you mean on the lighting you're asking if
Yes.
they have questions? Okay.
Yes.
I
Any-
don't have a question on the lighting, I do have a question on the plan.
Okay.
Well, I would recommend we do the waivers first.
Let's do the
just so
waivers
they're
and then
done,
we'll open it up.
So it's not confused, because we can see what happens.
If there's no further discussion,
Comments on the waivers from the public? Is that what you've been seeking now? Or
yes,
trying to get clarification?
on the waivers. Yes, please, Beth, yes.
Thank you, sorry. Beth Stidmeyer, Nashua Street. I'm just a little curious about the nature of the waiver for this stormwater, because what is subject to Mass DOT requirements for review associated with the stormwater permit from them is going to be associated with the tie-in to their system. However, examining the full scope of drainage and runoff and any impacts to adjacent properties, I do not think would be subject to the DOT purview. I think they're really concerned about what's coming off-site and directed to their system. So I just wanted to understand, this seems like because it is subject to a DOT permit doesn't mean it's not subject to compliance with our MS4 requirements. And we do have comments, at least from DPW, which I think are good, but I just didn't know if a waiver per se from our permit requirements was appropriate. I'm just not familiar with it. I'm definitely familiar with DOT,
Yep.
review, but I just don't think that their review.
Yeah, you got the
encompasses
question.
everything. Yeah.
Did you want to respond to that, Ken?
I think that, I'll make a response, but if Mark has more to add, I'll let Mark do it. I think what's important here is we're only talking about a site plan modification, that we already covered the stormwater regulations in the site plan approval.
But
So
they've changed since then, correct?
the only thing we're talking about here is the Phase 2 piece. The other piece has been approved. The stormwater design was approved by us and by DPW for the work that's under construction right now. So tonight's discussion is only a modification in the second piece of the work, which puts in a new building on the left. Am I correct with that? Oh, you can answer it as well if you wish.
Correct. The stormwater basin, this was part of the previously modified,
Right.
this area of the project, stormwater is being treated per
For
stormwater
regulations.
per the regulation, per stormwater standards, this portion is. However, this portion, the existing parking lot area, is being treated, all the runoff from this area, and that's what we had to analyze with Mass DOT, was all the water coming into their system, and we had to justify to them that we were satisfying the stormwater standards for the state, the state's stormwater management policy, the various 10 standards.
Was she here at the beginning of the meeting, Beth?
No.
Beth, were you here at the beginning when we started the conversation?
I'm sorry, I wasn't. They were talking about stormwater when I came in.
Okay, so-
And I did miss.
You missed that.
There was a permit
Yes.
prior to the, I'm sorry.
So the discussion tonight is only on a small modification that came in.
But the date that the stormwater system was approved was,
Is substantially the exact same.
but that date was,
Oh, it's in, the drawings would have to be
The,
back.
the original, if I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
the
please.
original storm, this has been before us off and on for over 5 years.
Okay.
So we wrestled to the ground the stormwater way back when Mark was still here and Dan was working for him as the engineer, and they went back and forth on it. What they discovered is, in working with DOT and tying to DOT, the parking lot itself was substandard, so they've had to do a lot of work on that, which requires them to put in deeper sumps and stuff to meet DOT standards. But the sheet runoff, as I understand it, hasn't changed on the part that the town oversees. And in Dan's memo, he says the calculations are basically the same. He sees no real, they're more than adequate for what they're doing. So he sees no reason to open up our permitting process for the stormwater runoff. It will be maintained on the property. And you may have missed the comment also where the applicant was asked also to handle a ponding issue at the HVAC place next door, and they worked that out also. So if your concern is our numbers changing, we've been told by DPW that didn't happen. They're here for the special permit for connecting the DOT connection, which requires the oil separator and a changing in the grade to put a new pipe in, because the original pipe was laid in the 50s. Is that a pretty good?
sorry.
No, I'm glad you talked about it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's where we're getting the details, unfortunately, yeah.
And so the landscape, because part of my stormwater comment was also related to opportunities associated with landscaping within the center of the parking lot and, creating some intermediate infiltration areas associated with tree plantings, basically.
Water table's too high.
So I just didn't know if the landscaping is under review tonight or if that is already permitted and not, part of the modification request. And I would really love to see street trees here too. It doesn't appear that that's part of the plan, but.
Trees are proposed along here, and also the tree density that's required by the number of parking spaces. So you have a number of trees that are required by linear frontage and then also by the interior parking spaces. So on this property, for infiltration purposes and meeting stormwater, this property is problematic with the height of the water table. To meet the standards that are needed, we would have to raise the parking lot, we'd have to raise the building. It's just not practical. The basin in the back, we ended up having to raise the bottom elevation of this 1.5 feet to make it comply with the current standards, which resulted in a larger footprint, and it also reduced the amount of pavement, and it also alleviated some of the ponding issues that are going on the neighboring property.
Okay, great. Yes, sir. Name and
Out of
address.
curiosity, the lights that are proposed through the waiver are 30 feet tall. That seems atypical for the town of Ayer. It seems more typical in Northumberland Mall or something. Is it necessary that they be that tall?
The problem we have here is when you go shorter with poles, you need more of them. And this property currently, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. We have numerous there's currently a sewer easement coming through here with a sewer line coming through. There's also a sewer line in here. There's an existing fire service line located here, which ties in this corner, which we're retrofitting and moving over because just once the addition goes in and I don't know what.
I don't know what that thing.
Wah, wah.
It's not
Can I
true.
just do that every time?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
No.
Is that an internet problem?
You gotta have some fun, Mark, or we're not gonna stick around.
All right.
How am I getting? Let's see here. Plans.
That's okay. We understood that.
Back to there. Oh, I remembered it. So we have an existing drain line that runs through here. We have existing sewer lines. If we put more poles out here, it becomes problematic with the existing utilities. We'd have to double the amount of poles that are out there, maybe even at least double. And again, that's additional cost to be setting more poles, and the cost that's already incurred with the improvements that Mass DOT is requiring us to make in their right-of-way, which they're not compensating us for that. So we need to introduce sidewalk and curbing and retrofit the structures where they want them to be versus where they are now.
The town ordinances require apparently a shorter pole, and do we really have a real need to go to something that tall, which is atypical of the town?
I'm good with it.
Well, I think that there's a little confusion here. We're not seeking a waiver, it's grandfathered in,
Yeah.
so that waiver really is not needed.
That said, we do have a motion to vote on this waiver.
Yeah.
There's no need for a waiver because it's grandfathered in.
Right, though, I thought,
I think
I
you-
did make,
Jeff made a motion.
if the waiver was in the papers, if it is at the desire of the applicant to withdraw the request for the waiver, I will withdraw my motion.
No, I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
I'd say, Mr. Geronimo, that a waiver would be granted if there were no change in the poles, if they stayed in exactly the same location and
Well, I
stuff like
think the
that.
town
But I think we're good with the discussion that we're having on it right now.
I think the town needs to decide if we need a waiver or not. We were told that it's been there since 1956, and that it's standard in air codes, that it's grandfathered in.
So, Mr. Chair,
And to speak to that, it's a better product having 4 poles instead of tripling the number of poles. Obviously, this property is going through a major redevelopment, and it is a better project for air and for that corridor than it currently sits. We're only asking for the 2 waivers. Before, what we are now having less light pollution because the more of the current lighting than was there in 1956. You walk by there now, you drive by there now, and the bulbs are open. These are directed to a certain
Right,
spot.
Mr. Geronimo, we're in agreement with you. There's no contest here. We're with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
so, Mr. Chair, I think we can, by granting a waiver, put this to bed. I think by granting a waiver, I would suggest
so
you vote
let's-
in favor of the waiver and put this to bed.
Let's have a vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Vote, chair votes aye, it's unanimous in favor of granting the waiver for the lighting height.
Mhm.
The second one is regarding the waiver of a management plan, stormwater management plan. Do I have,
I'm going to ask Mr. Diskin, I don't have a copy of it in front of me.
I'll make a motion that the Air Planning Board grant a waiver from the air stormwater regulations for Phase 2 work for the site plan approval modifications for Air 22 LLC on 22 Fitchburg Road.
Seconded.
further discussion? Yes, Ian?
Can somebody summarize what is different from the regulations for me?
Well, there's no difference.
There's no difference. The issue is
What
that...
the basic concept here is that, I'll try to summarize, Mr. Chair. They ran into a situation with this modification where they had to put in a new curb cut to satisfy Mass DOT. When they applied to Mass DOT for that curb cut, Mass DOT pointed out that there is a connection to the site to an existing stormwater system that's controlled by Mass DOT. In order for them to get authorization to continue to use that existing stormwater system with the drainage that exists on the site, Mass DOT came in and put on a series of regulations that will require them to upgrade the existing system to keep it connected to the Mass DOT system. That is beyond the scope of a permit that we granted already for the rest of the site for our stormwater regulations and added another level of regulation.
Yeah.
So this requirement is basically saying, we agree that the Mass DOT requirement is maybe even superior to what we would have required had they not come in, but they might have actually kept the existing system there. And that we have a letter we've received from our DPW who concurs with that recommendation and basically says that he does not have any issues with the stormwater design. The calculations appear to be adequate. The stormwater design is an improvement from the original design, and there's a permitted discharge to the Mass DOT stormwater system. So based on that explanation by the applicant and the letter from the DPW, I feel very confident that we can grant a waiver from our stormwater regulations.
So this sounds like a minor change and not a waiver because
Well,
we aren't dismissing or overriding the regulations.
the applicant asked for a waiver, so
Well,
that's the way I'm
This was a
we're
Right,
approaching
that's-
it.
modification.
yeah, I mean, just,
He asked for a waiver.
Technically,
Right.
it's in there that we need to comply, or unless a waiver is granted. So
So-
and the reason being, we got greater scrutiny from Mass DOT than the original approval.
It probably helps satisfy the conditions for Mass DOT as well, to show them that we agree.
correct.
Yeah.
My comment only.
Thank you. Any further discussion from members of the board? I see, yes,
Sorry.
Ms. Sudemeyer.
So, doesn't it comply with our stormwater requirements? So why would a waiver be needed?
It's
So they don't have to submit another stormwater management plan, that's why.
It's
So
another,
we didn't get a full stormwater report.
It's already been done. For the portion under our jurisdiction, that plan has already been made. That's why there's no need for a second one. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous. Thank you. What's up, what's next in the process? Mark?
Well, general public comments and,
Questions from the
well, yeah, discussion of the board. Just want to keep in mind that there are several conditions that were proposed that we'll get to after we have the public comment period and all. One is about a sidewalk extension, which I'm sure the applicant will want to discuss with us. And otherwise, the general conditions, which are pretty standard.
Okay. Discussion from the board?
I've got one more from Micah. Could you explain that a little bit further, the landscaping requirements that you put on this drawing, if they're an improvement over what we saw before, they seem to be?
yeah, well, previously, it was very benign what we had. Now there's a density, there's a number of shrubs. I'll go, let's see, I'll close this.
It's a planting list.
The current zoning requires, come on.
Be nice to it, it'll drop you again.
I know, I'll get the angry. The current landscaping is one for every 10 spaces, and there's 98 spaces. That requires 10 trees. For frontage, one tree per every 25 feet. We have 358 feet of frontage, so that requires 15 trees. Shrubs and bushes is based on number of 12 per tree. There's 15 trees total, so that results in 180 shrubs spaced throughout the site. And then we also have the open space. I'm trying to get that. I have to do the based on the paved area. We have an open space calculation coverage. I'll go here. existing. The maximum, minimum is 20, we had 31, now we're up to 27 for the lot area, open space. So we had a greater density previously. We had 20, and we're now at 27.
So that's, the section you're referring to is in the zoning, zoning bylaw regulations, right? Section 9.
Yep.
That whole,
Yes,
those
yes,
are section
yes,
9.
Yes.
Okay, general regulations.
9.1.983, I think.
916 and
Or
7.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
it's on the side.
Yep, right
Okay,
here.
thank you. I got it.
Mr. Chairman, can I?
Yes, please, Julie.
Can I just ask, the 8 bicycle spaces, are those near the main stop, or are they at the auto place as well? Just for curiosity, I don't
Curiosity.
derail our conversation.
I placed them
They're up
here
there.
because with the phasing, with the contract that we had, the negotiations that we'd phased, that they had again, AutoZone on in agreement with an approved plan, and then as we discussed earlier, once we went out there to satisfy some abutter concerns, we had to make some retrofits.
I won't have to lock my bike to the bike corral. or
Any
tree
further
anymore.
discussion from the board before I open up to the public? Yes, sir. Could you name and address, please?
Mark Phillips, Mountain Laurel Road.
If you could speak louder, sir, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sorry, Mark Phillips, Mountain Laurel Road.
Hi, Mark.
Hi. So just a quick question with regards to the trees that Ken was just asking about. I think it was identified quite a bit along the road and towards the back in the drainage area, but is it possible to place some down through the center of the parking lot in some way, shape, or form so that we don't have a massive heat island just sitting there? I thought I heard earlier that the parking spaces went from 166 to 169. Can we drop back 3 spaces and maybe put some trees in those spaces instead in a tree box or something like that or whatever? Just asking.
Agreed.
One reason this is, right now, the way the grading is out here, we have 2 bowls that are going on here and here. We didn't want to change the drainage patterns. We really don't have the luxury of changing the grade and introducing, once we introduce structures and landscape islands, now you need to be cognizant of how the sheet flow is working. So I didn't want any impediments to the stormwater coming to this point and this point. Otherwise, you end up having to do these little sluiceways like we had to do here to catch this runoff to get it to here. And from a maintenance perspective and from a plowing perspective, it ends up being somewhat onerous to have peppered landscape islands throughout the parking lot. Could they be introduced? I suppose they could, but again, it's additional cost and additional future maintenance issues, given that we have an existing drain and utility lines going through here and through here. If something ever happens with the sewer line, then they're going to be ripping up the landscaping, and it's just more of a future maintenance cost. And then if you put trees in there, now the roots are going to go into the sewer, I&I infiltration and cracking the pipes, and it's problematic.
Haven't we, excuse me, Mr. Chair, can you go over where pavement is going to be removed to install landscaping?
All along this right here, that's all pavement right now. All this is pavement. All this is pavement. All this is pavement. Likewise here and here and here. And then in this area, this is following the existing edge of pavement. Previously, the previous design had it much more pavement. This actually was squared off. So we've reduced the pavement considerably on the property.
Yes, Beth?
I definitely support, strategically locating trees within the parking area to reduce that heat island effect. It's a very large parking place. I certainly appreciate the extent to which the pavement is being removed around the perimeter. is, quite an eyesore right now, and this will be a significant improvement. I certainly acknowledge that and appreciate the effort that's gone into the design. But I do really feel like it would be a huge missed opportunity if we don't put some trees within the large parking area. I also would like to see another, I believe right now on next to the sidewalk at the roadway, it appears that there are 2 street trees in that sort of inner island in between the driveways, but I really think a third located in the middle there would help a lot as well. And maybe not looking at the plan accurately, but I only see them kind of at the sides close to the driveways and not in the middle stretch there along the roadway. And then I also think that there's really a need to buffer the stormwater basin from the roadway. Right now, the grading is completed there and it's just not an attractive view at all. So I think there's a lot of potential for adding some shrubs at least along the stormwater basin area between the roadway and the basin. That would be a tremendous improvement from the aesthetic from the roadway. And it's something that we can see right now already, the circumstances there and the omission of any landscaping in that location on the plans that are before us tonight. So just a few thoughts. I also think that it was a good question related to the location of the bike racks. And I think locating a bike rack, at least by that patio, the exterior patio, next to the small building with the drive-through would make a lot of sense, so that people aren't walking across the parking lot to go get a coffee at that shop or whatever it might be. But yeah, I think that a few more strategically located trees could go a very long way to reduce heat island effect, add to the aesthetics, mitigate noise,
Got you.
everything on the site. Thank you.
Did you want to respond?
Yeah, it's also problematic with the lighting. If we introduce street trees, now we're going to have to introduce more light poles, and that the shadowing that will occur over time as the trees grow and mature. So then that's just something that you kind of go hand in hand.
Visual.
At least 30 feet tall.
Sarah?
I just have a question on the Advanced Auto Parts building. Is that building done? Like, is that footprint going to get any bigger? No? That's my question. Thank you.
And just a comment, I'm sure, just knowing the applicant's history on other properties that he owns throughout the area, I'm sure he's going to be, I'm going to speak for him, but he will introduce landscaping in here. I'm sure he will. Most of the properties that he owns, he goes above and beyond what is typically required. So.
And answering Ms. Withy's question about the footprint of the AutoZone building?
It hasn't changed.
Yeah, it doesn't
That's.
change.
It's already on the drawing.
Any further discussion? Yes, Marion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to speak in support of Beth Sinnemeyer's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. Any further discussion? Board?
I mean, even a small change like taking the 2 7 spaces and dropping those to 6 and putting an island there where that walkway is would be a step in that direction. A little more green space.
What are you talking right here?
Yeah.
Well, that's where the site sign is. The existing site sign is here,
Okay.
so we'd be repositioning it here. So you're not, if that's kind of counterproductive, placing trees in front of the site sign.
Hearing no further discussion, do we have a motion? No, yes?
Well, I wanted to bring up one additional recommendation of the DPW director, which I reiterated in my staff report. Comment number 1 on his letter of November 3rd. The sidewalk should continue along the entire frontage of 22 Fitchburg Road, so future extension can be made. This is Mass DOT jurisdiction, and coordination with them as part of their permit process should be completed. I have made MassDOT aware of the need for a sidewalk extension on Fitchburg Road with a future connection to 65 Fitchburg Road, the site of the proposed 40B. just down the street. So that is something which, Mika and I discussed briefly, and, he might have something to say about that, but that was certainly a recommendation coming out of DPW. To extend the sidewalk in front of essentially the stormwater area near the auto parts store.
Zoom in.
So
Jeez, what's going
So
on with that?
regarding that, is that something that
We
you
got
can
the
commit to, or you can only commit that you can negotiate with MassDOT over it?
That would have to be negotiated with MassDOT in that
It's awful.
there's a, I'm going to zoom in right here so we can go into what we're talking about. This is that phase one that's under construction that Mass DOT said that it does not need a permit on their end, can continue, and that's why we're here. We can phase the project. The phase two, which is what we hear tonight, dealt with the drainage connection coming through and the drive-through building. We left this pretty much as is because we were uncertain with what Mass DOT, we just got actually October 28th, we finally got our approval from Mass DOT for this drainage improvements that's shown on this plan. We weren't sure what Mass DOT was going to have us do along this stretch through here. And again, we didn't want to introduce anything else that we'd have to come back before the board and revise and remove. And so we kind of left that as a kind of an empty palette at the moment. To do what Mass DOT wants, the edge of pavement is this dashed line right here. That's where they would want the sidewalk to be placed. So currently, there's that catch basin there. There's monumentation here. There's the highway bound here. There's gate valves here. All these would have to be repositioned and relocated. And it's again more cost on the applicant to put in this 100 feet of sidewalk, which they're already extending the sidewalk to this point along most of their frontage.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
So I'm the liaison to the Affordable Housing Trust for the Planning Board. What we're looking at and what the town unanimously voted on October 24th was money CPC funds for phase one of a project that will have 102 units. They'll be mixed 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. They will be, if you come across the street to the Anderson Funeral Home, they will be adjacent to the Anderson Funeral Home project.
Yes.
They're going for funding in the next 6 weeks. We hope that they will get funding in this round and that they will have, within the next 24 months, 60 units built. So you got 60 units of people coming to your store. So if I can say something like, maybe we could find a couple bucks to move a gate valve, I would put that plea out there, please.
And it's a condition that if
Yeah,
it's
I'm sorry.
agreeable to Mass DOT, that.
Well, yeah, I understand it needs to be agreeable, but I'm just doing we're building housing in this town hand over fist, and it's right in your guys' front yard. So I appreciate that it's cost, but I think and this was not even on the horizon in 2017.
No.
So.
Well, there was no sidewalk in 2000.
No,
on that whole stretch.
This has drawbacks in some people's eyes. It is an improvement in some people's eyes, and we're doing stuff farther up the street from you, where those units are going to be there forever if the project goes forward, and we're working hard to make that work. I mean, the town put almost $500,000 down on the table the other day for them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I think the language that he had was condition of occupancy for that sidewalk. So I think the applicant's concerned that that sidewalk construction isn't tied to the advanced auto parts, that it could be potentially part of the additional retrofits that are going on in the parking lot. Because again, approaching Mass DOT, it's not going to be a quick process, because we reached out to them in January, and it took till end of October to get a response. So
yeah, and it's not under our purview. Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I'm sure you're aware, any 40B projects that happen in Massachusetts go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Zoning Board of Appeals is a separate entity than the Planning Board. That many people find that surprising. I don't, but that's okay. And I do know that the Zoning Board of Appeals, I will not speak for them, and I don't think any representatives are here now, but they're in the process of negotiating with NOAA, who is the proponent for the 40B, to do improvements along Fitchburg Road that everyone will benefit from. And you may remember, Mr. DiGeronimo, our discussion about street signage. Way back when, I think we had a meeting about it, I mentioned something along the lines of what's in front of Anderson, or more of a monument-style sign. I think as opposed to an aerial sign, that's a personal, but something along those lines would tie it together. But we don't want to talk about signs right now. But we will, I believe, and I hope strongly, have 100 units of housing in the next 3 or 4 years up there, in an 8-building process up and across. Go ahead.
This is a commercial zone, and that the 40B is taken outside of the commercial zone. So when you comment before that there's some pushback, this plan follows this town's planning exactly once. The waivers we're asking for are minimum, and what we fulfilled here is what the town has asked for, almost to the letter. It's a commercial area that we developed, so I don't know what the negative side to this project is, because it's exactly what, if the town had asked for a different kind of development here, we would have done a different kind of development. But this is a commercial business zone which we fulfilled.
And I understand that.
Right.
I fully understand that, and not to be argumentative, sir, we do have a change in the use proposed across the street, and I think it would be a great benefit to you to be able to bring people onto your property safely with the inclusion of the sidewalk. That's all.
Yeah, it really is that simple. It's just that common sense. There's going to be a whole lot more people living nearby. It makes sense to have a sidewalk for them to walk on.
I'm sorry, are you asking me for something?
I'm just making a comment, sir. So could that be imposed as a condition to
No, it
approve?
can't be a condition. It's not our jurisdiction.
Huh?
Yeah,
It can't
it's
be,
not in
right?
our
It can't
jurisdiction.
be because it's Mass Dot, right?
Yeah.
All we can ask is that you work with Mass Dot. It's the most we can ask you, right?
Trees in our jurisdiction?
That sidewalk
I'm being
isn't,
snarky.
Yeah.
because it's Mass Dot
The
property.
trees are, right?
They're on the site.
Yeah.
This is off-site.
So maybe
It meets the bylaw.
we want more trees? No.
So, further discussion?
Well,
Do I have a motion?
is the sense of the board to act this evening, or does the
Yeah,
board agree?
it is.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we might strike, if I may, just for the sake of keeping everything straight here, strike the sidewalk condition, and based on Beth Sudemeyer's points about the landscaping in front of the basin, in front of the auto parts store, I wrote up a potential additional condition, which would be, quote, additional suitable landscaping. By suitable landscaping, I mean low in height. Shall be placed in front of the stormwater basin, in front of the auto parts store. Just, on their property, just to spruce it up a little bit. We don't want
Site
trees.
distance, I don't want to, from a site distance perspective too, that's the other thing, you put too many trees and shrubs here, and then this
Or
is,
even small,
Yeah.
3 foot.
yeah.
Okay, I'm just,
Is that tree there that you're showing in the gray, is that still there or is it gone?
No, that's the stormwater.
No.
No, this thing.
That's gone.
Okay.
yeah. All right, so it's your belief that any landscaping there could impede site distance?
If you put low-growing placing trees there is problematic.
Oh, yeah, I was saying
Okay,
low-growing
yeah.
shrubs. So additional suitable landscaping, parentheses, low-growing shrubs, shall be placed along the frontage of Fitchburg Road in front of the auto parts store. Do you want to word craft that better?
I think that's
Maybe we
easy.
say native pollinators, please. Low-growing native pollinators.
All right. As amended.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Well, the other condition would be, okay, I wrote one more up here.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, they have to go to the building commissioner for signage, so that comes later.
Right.
So any changes to signage on site shall be approved by the Ayer building commissioner, so that's just a statement of the obvious, so they know. Yeah. I did have something about the stormwater, that if the system changes to come back, you know, if it,
They have to do that anyway.
Right.
yeah, they would have to do that anyway.
I'll make a motion that the Air Planning Board approve the site plan approval modification for Air 22 LLC, 22 Fitchburg Road, in accordance with the drawings submitted by S.J. Mulaney Engineering, Inc., the final revision date of 10/7/2022. I believe that's
With the
it.
conditions.
With
as-
the-
No, I made a motion.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
without the condition.
All right, fair enough, I just wanted to check.
Second.
Further discussion?
I'd like to condition the motion with a request to the applicant, not a condition, only a
Okay.
request,
Request.
that the applicant work with the Mass DOT when and if that time comes up within their jurisdiction to extend the sidewalk beyond to the entire length of the site. Only work with them, that's all I'm saying. Not saying that it's a condition.
Okay.
And that the applicant, in the best interest of their site improvements, add some landscaping to the area we talked about of the, I want to say it's a retention basin in front of the auto parts store. Neither of which are absolutes, but we're looking for them to cooperate.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that also.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Chair votes aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Congratulations, you're approved.
We'll call a 5-minute
We got
recess.
a 5-minute break.
I'm sure you'll see
Don't
me
forget
again.
what you think.
Thank you.
So if we can,
Thank you. Thank you,
we'll
Mr.
regroup at 7:31.
I'm sorry, did you say we're taking off?
5 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm calling this back to order. So the next item on our agenda, of course, is continued discussion of Stratton Hill. Do we need a vote to continue the public
Aye.
meeting?
Move to continue the public meeting for Stratton Hill Preliminary Subdivision Plan, 35 lots off of Wright Road.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Chair votes aye.
Wait a minute,
What?
I abstain,
You abstain? Okay.
because it's a public hearing, I think, not a meeting.
Okay. So we have one
I'm not
abstention,
sure
4
that I
ayes and 1
understand.
abstention. I don't know either.
I don't
but I'll-
need to.
I'll-
I didn't even hear it, so.
Okay. So, we have a number of things to start. We're going to start with the Conservation Committee report and recommendation. And our last meeting, the board had an extensive discussion about it. And I thought it would be appropriate to begin by allowing the representatives of the applicant, Mr. Collins and Mr. Dillis, to issue their own comments or reflections on the recommendation that's produced by the Conservation Committee. And then we would open it up, the floor, to the public. So gentlemen,
Well, and I
thoughts and
don't,
reflections.
yeah, I don't want to take an enormous amount of time, which I certainly have the capability of doing, but, you know, we have looked at their report, and I know they put an enormous amount of time into it. We recognize a couple of things. These things are very subjective. I think that a lot of the points that they make are very well taken. The site is extremely important, which, as I've said before, which is why I talked my client into buying it 24 years ago, so that we could preserve most of it. It's a very important site. I don't doubt that there were qualities to the north of the power lines, is it? The interior of the power lines that is superior to that closer to Wright Road. The one thing that I have felt from the beginning is that it's a very good compromise, I believe, to preserve as part of the open space the area to the right of the subdivision road so that it enhances not only the public access to the open space, but it also really protects Long Pond. I think it makes for aesthetically for a much nicer package to have all of that right-hand side unbroken open space. So we could certainly achieve compressing the development all on the right road side, and the unfortunate thing is I think you end up losing what I think is an important aesthetic component of the proposed design, and that is that open space all the way up to the subdivision road. But as I say, these things are very subjective. That happens to be my opinion on it and Stan's opinion on it. I'm sure there are as many opinions as there are people that would wish to opine on the subject. I do think that this proposal is infinitely better than what you had on the books. And when you read your bylaw, as I've done, this project actually is a pretty good example of how limited development can work under your bylaw. And when you have the percentages that we're dealing with here, with a major portion of the site being preserved, and it happens to be adjacent to an enormous piece of open space that already exists, I do believe this proposed change to this site, this design that Stan has come up with, really does speak to the merits of your bylaw. So again, I mean, no disrespect to the Conservation Commission. I think they took an enormous amount of time discussing this with the reviewer that they had engaged, and also they took an enormous amount of time walking the site and reviewing the stuff that we had submitted. And I respect their opinion, but I think this design is a pretty good compromise and also speaks well to your bylaw. So that's our feeling on it. And again, it's very subjective.
And I'd add
Mr.
that
Jones, yeah.
Bob and I actually met with Lauren at Natural Heritage yesterday and talked about several things with the site. And one thing we talked about was the power line, and I know that the power line easement, and I know that one of the points in the report was doing something to protect that easement because that's a wildlife corridor. And she agreed with that, but she didn't see the need to do anything specific like a wildlife tunnel or anything like that. She didn't feel that anything like that was necessary. She agrees that, you know, habitat, things are gonna go back and forth across there, but with the limited number of lots, she didn't really see that that was a concern that rose it to some other level of having to do some specific protection for wildlife in the power lines.
Did you get something in writing from her about that? or-
No, not
Yeah,
yet. This was just a meeting we had yesterday, actually going over turtle nesting areas.
Okay,
But again, before we see you next time,
okay.
with the definitive plan, we'll actually have submitted for a modification of the CMP on the basis of the preliminary plan, so we'll have something in writing from her at that point. Actually, on that subject, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to go on and on, where we did speak with her about the turtle nesting areas, we did identify a place that she thought would be appropriate, which would kind of be up about where that triangular shaped thing is, wouldn't it be? Right up in that general vicinity, yeah.
Yep.
Right up in that general area. There happens to be actually an area that has already been disturbed that could be further dressed up and incorporated as a turtle nesting area.
That's the area, she's talking about the replicated turtle nesting area, that's what you're talking
Right.
about.
Yeah,
I just want to
yeah.
make sure we're talking about that.
Yeah.
Pile right here.
Yeah.
Excuse me, sir. Stan, did you put that triangle on the drawing?
No, I don't,
That's an existing drainage easement from the previous subdivision.
Yeah.
Well, there's something wrong there because the road is going right through it. And I've walked that road, it's all boulders.
Yeah, I don't know what that
That's-
triangle is,
That's not
but,
shown right there.
yeah.
It's,
But,
it's further back.
yeah, but that's about the general area
Yeah,
where
I
we
get
were
it, yeah,
talking.
right.
For the, but that'll show on the definitive plan. The other thing, and again, this is a pedantic thing, that'll be interesting, the back area, the substantial acreage, is intended to be gifted to Mass Department of Fisheries and Wildlife. I'm gonna actually probably put a declaration or restriction on it, but also an easement to enable the Ayer Conservation Commission, assuming they're amenable to this, to having a maintenance capability of that turtle nesting area that we would actually then endow.
Okay.
But I'll talk to the Conservation Commission about that also. We'll resolve that before we come back and see you with a definitive.
Mr. Dills, did you want to add anything?
No, I think Bob covered most everything.
Ken?
I just want to double check. Is this a plan we've had before that?
Yeah, well, that's the.
This is the one that,
This
this
is the-
comparative plan. I just
Yes.
wanted-
What
Right.
he prepared as a comparison
Right.
plan. So
Yeah.
I thought- But I also have the summary composite plan.
Okay.
So,
I didn't copy every single plan sheet onto my thing, but this is the actual plan.
and if I, and the power lines we're talking about are now bisecting top to bottom.
Correct.
And
That's
north is left and
North
south
is-
is right.
Right.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the issues that Concom raised,
You want me to go back to the other one?
would you please?
Yeah.
So one of the concerns that they raised was over here, protecting this because this is where the runoff would go to Long Pond. But again, in your revised plan, those lots have been removed, so I would say that that's moot at this point.
That's right.
So the areas of greatest controversy that I see really is the issue of the north of the power line issue.
That's right.
That's where I think is the heart of this. And you just, I believe you just earlier articulated that trying to squeeze these down here would put you all the way back, I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't touch it.
You can't get close to it, Jan.
Can't even get close. I'm so sorry. So just vaguely here, it mean what? Building more lots here?
And on the right.
On
The only
side
way
where
you
the
can
Well,
pond-
you
get,
can't, well,
yeah.
that we want out.
Yeah.
That's already, we said,
Well,
no, we don't
yeah.
want that.
In
right?
fact, that's one of the conditions of Mass Fisheries and Wildlife is not to build over there.
Yeah.
They
Right.
would
Those are
like
the-
not to be built over there,
It's in
that's
the
correct.
Conservation Management Plan.
Yeah.
At least the original.
That was the part south of the power lines, but they never addressed at that particular time north of the power lines.
Correct.
There
Yeah,
were
I'm
lots.
talking south of the
Yeah.
power lines.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a difficult topography on the left-hand side too, as those lots are deeper, it drops off quite a bit.
That's
There's a lot of
very
ledge.
challenging.
There's a lot of
to
ledge
walk.
over there.
That's right.
Requires
And there
more
is a
blasting,
deep-
things like that.
Yeah.
Very steep.
So as I say,
And there's a
I do
wetland.
believe it's a
There's
compromise.
a brook there too as well,
Yeah, that's correct.
or intermittent stream.
Something.
I guess, intermittent stream.
Did the board wish to make any further comments before I open it up to the public for any comments or questions they may have?
Okay.
Yes, Ken?
The assent agreement, we talked about it at a meeting, you weren't here. The question came up again, any status report on the assent agreement with the Live Power?
We'll have it in hand before we.
Before the definitive.
Before the definitive,
Okay,
that's
which is what
correct.
you've been
It's going to
saying
be
Yeah.
critical.
right along.
Yep. Now, as I say, I didn't want to
Yeah.
do wheel spinning
Yes. okay.
until I knew we had something.
Well, since it's been a while since we had you here, I think it's beneficial to review some of these things
Sure.
we talked about before.
Thank you, Ken.
I have some comments, but I'd like to see what comes up, and we'll pick it up.
So we're
Thank you,
opening up
Mr.
the
Chair.
floor to the public. Questions, comments? And this is regarding the Conservation Commission's recommendations and the applicant's response to them. Beth?
I apologize because I'm not fully familiar with the plans as proposed, but I do certainly agree with the prioritization of everything towards Long Pond being preserved and untouched. But I was thinking that there was a stormwater treatment proposed there, which I would rather not even see on that side of the road either. So just wanted to make that clear. If the lots have been removed, but there's still disturbance to the slope leading down to Long Pond, I would like to see that reconsidered. Again, I haven't seen the most recent iteration of the plans to know if that stormwater treatment is still proposed on that side of the road. The waivers that are being
Might not be able to see that.
requested, I think, I don't understand why a landscape plan waiver.
Can we, let's hold that to the
Okay.
next conversation till we get to that topic,
Yep,
because we're not
sure.
even there yet.
Sure, okay.
Did, Mr. Dills, could you respond to that, the issue of stormwater management in that area? I know that I know that that's the focus of the definitive plan when we actually get to engineering, but in a
Right.
general way, if you can speak to that.
Well, the original plan had several detention areas on that side of the road, which you can see on this plan. We probably will still need something on that side of the road. There's that basin that exists on a Wright Road now, which that needs to be rehabilitated because it's fallen into disrepair. And it's our goal to keep anything that we need on that side of the road as close to the road as possible. And we need to do, as Bob said, once we know that we have a configuration that everybody's happy with, we will go back out and do soil testing to find those places. And anything we can do to keep it as close to that side of the road as possible or on the other side of the road, we intend to do that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the public or questions? Mark and then Marion, but Mark had his hand up first.
Mark Phillips, Mount Laurel Road. So, with regards to what we just discussed around trying to keep everything off that side of the sidewalk, the west side of Long Pond, let's say, and any runoff, I think it would be highly desirable, just as the lady in front of me was just requesting, do we sacrifice a lot or whatever just to move that onto the west side of the eastern road, I guess you'd say. It almost looks like a one-for-one spot from where it currently sits to the lot right opposite it on the other side of the road. You're sacrificing one house, but you're, again, keeping a pristine lake in
I think
really
he's
good shape.
talking this right
I think
Unfortunately, it's not as simple as that, though.
Right.
Depends on the soils.
And I think everything to the west side of the road going in is very ledgy.
Yeah, that's
And
solid rock.
as you drop down and get closer to the pond, the soils get better and better as you get closer. So everything inside the circle there is pretty much ledge, or it's very shallow soils.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be suitable. It just wouldn't accomplish that.
It would actually, even if you put something there, it would be more detrimental because
It
the
wouldn't
water
function.
would infiltrate, it wouldn't function properly.
Is there a way to
The
direct?
fact of the matter is you have to do testing to determine the best
That's
location,
right.
right?
Correct.
So we
So
certainly
we-
are gonna look.
Between now and the definitive plan, there'll be some testing, field,
Oh, absolutely.
deep hole testing, whatever
That's
done.
right.
We'll see it on the final plan.
That's correct.
And then we can talk about it again.
That's
and
correct.
Determine whether it's really gonna work, or
Sure,
if you have to give up some land to
that's right.
put in the detention basins. There's no chance of any subsurface detention here. There's just too much ledge, I would imagine.
Yeah, you're not gonna probably get enough depth, is what I believe.
But either way, we have more testing to do,
Sure,
which we'll see
correct.
the results of.
That's right.
In the future.
Once
And
we know that this design, this layout is gonna be acceptable in this form or something very close to it,
Yeah.
we need to do that sooner than later because the season is closing in on us too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if I may,
Yes, Jeff.
along those lines, so in the whole world of low impact development, stuff like that, I don't recall the width of the road right now as you currently laid it out, roughly.
I wanna say 22.
22 feet, so it's, so here I am thinking about this, and we'll discuss roads and how many entryways and stuff like that there are to it, but one of the things we can do to hopefully manage the stormwater is narrow roads, low impact development, stuff like that, trying to figure stuff like that, so I'm hoping that you keep that in mind as you do this.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to see Caltex and subsurface everywhere, but I don't know that it's gonna work.
Right, and you mean, yeah,
But-
on each individual lot.
Yeah, just because these are preliminary plans, it's understanding how much impermeable surface is,
Mhm.
and it is going to be very helpful, but I would appreciate you keep that in mind, because that's,
Absolutely.
Jim,
We're
could I-
typically showing the sidewalk on the outboard side of that Long Pond side, right?
Correct.
I believe so.
On
That's
the-
right
on the
road up to
preliminary-
the,
Couldn't we, I mean, don't you simply super elevate the road and pitch it the other way so that
yeah.
water, you wouldn't crown it, you want to keep, you'd keep water from running towards the
Right,
pond.
or
You
you'd
can use
have-
the
or you'd-
sidewalk, the berm, and
Right, or
super
you'd
elevate
have,
the
or
road
you'd
in
have
the other
curb, you'd
direction.
have some kind of a berm on the side, yeah. It wouldn't run off the road right overland.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have some open minds to certain cheating actors up there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
well, that's-
could I say one other thing that might alleviate some of the concerns too? You know, those drainage areas are actually lifted off of the prior definitive plan, which had a lot more road, so a lot more impervious cover. But they happen to be areas that we know had already testing that was suitable. So we're certainly going to look at it and see what we can compress a little bit further, given that there's less impervious cover with this plan.
There's probably about half the pavement, because
Yeah.
this is much narrower and a lot shorter.
I would
And the
also,
requirements, the formal requirements were for much wider pavement.
Much wider road
Right.
and
Well, I
much
think it was
longer.
46 feet, I think.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
just the changes that were made
Yeah,
have reduced the pavement.
you know, I'm not gonna jump on your side of the game right now, but the smaller lot size also makes a lot less turf, a lot less runoff on turf. I'm hoping to see more extensive shrub and tree for holding water and stuff like that,
Yeah.
as best as we can, so. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, low impact development, you know, so find a
My
way.
second question then was, has New England Power already been approached about
He
the
doesn't know
crossing
this
of the right of way?
place.
About the what?
The crossing of the right of way?
yes, yeah, on multiple occasions, yeah.
Okay, and they're clear with that?
Yes.
No issues, okay.
And that's one thing that Ken asked, that we have
Over a year
a
ago.
letter from them in writing.
That's the
Yeah.
point of the letter is, Mark.
No, it's
Yeah.
not a letter, it's a
It's an assent,
right.
yeah.
yeah, consent agreement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
consent agreement.
I asked him to myself. I
You
have a contact.
you used the technical term, though.
I called him up and asked him myself.
He used to work with me.
I tried to tell him not to issue it.
So then the next part of that would then be,
Strike that from them.
are we 100% confident that we do need two roads? And is there a way of working around that passes everybody's, DPWs and everybody in the fire, everybody's requirements that, do we only possibly need a single crossing of that right of way? I guess I would just ask that to be considered.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think,
Well, that would be a very, then I
Then you get a
agree, that would be a
dead end,
very
real
long
dead
dead end.
yeah, you get a real good dead end,
Yeah.
You could live with.
unless you can,
I mean, you could do one as emergency only, maybe, and do it as
Well,
stone dressed, but sometimes those don't work.
Yeah, those are maintenance issues.
Yeah.
I was gonna say there's a current trail that runs through the easement.
Right.
It's drivable, I don't know how, but, yeah, no, it wouldn't work.
It might be preferable for a mountain biker and
Yeah.
No, it was in a four-wheel vehicle.
but probably not a fire
It's a
truck.
streetcar. No, but a fire truck's not gonna do it.
But I do think, even though I understand what the gentleman's getting at, and there's an enormous amount of road there that's not
700.
really being used,
Yeah.
boy, that would be a real stretch on dead-end regulations. It really would be.
Couldn't we look at,
Go ahead, Mr. Diskin. We were talking about this today. He's got a great idea.
could we look at the possibility of a single lane pinching the road as you cross under the power lines and creating either a one-way, or I guess you could go two ways if no one was coming in the other direction, but there'd be a possibility that the traffic all rotated in the same direction. And you pinch it, so anyone who lived to the south could go in both directions, But if you go up to the north, you're gonna come in one direction, one or the other direction.
Oh, that's an interesting
As you go
idea.
under the power lines and pitch it down to a 12-foot lane or something, effectively shrinking the road.
That's right. You mentioned it to me earlier.
Dress it up
too.
with landscaping, whatever you gotta do.
We had a conversation with it, say, and I have a great deal of experience living on Nantucket Island, where if you ain't backing out, you're not driving on the road, because the roads are not wide enough for two
Right.
cars. So I'm wondering, again, in the world of neighborhood streets and low-impact development, and also minimizing the amount of surface that reptiles have to cross,
Yeah.
of course, safety has to be taken into account, But I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I wonder what public safety would
Well, you could draw
think
up a
about
model,
that.
you could make a
Yeah.
model up and we could review it when you
Yeah.
get to the definitive plan.
But it would have the amount of impervious surface up there.
Yeah.
For
And
a
that-
fair
that-
section of
that-
unused
That upper
road.
loop would just be one way, like through.
Something like that or something.
If, you know, we have software where you can drive a fire truck
Yeah,
around
right.
there, if we can narrow
The
it
model
down,
with
and
the
if we can
radius.
show the public safety people that they can maneuver up there, then if that's something that you'd like us to look at, we're happy to do that.
Okay, good.
And it just, we're trying to be creative about lessening the impact.
Yeah, but I wonder, and again, not to take your time up, but why not take it then one step further and instead of confusing people with a one-way, make it so that that's emergency only, perhaps with bollards that they can go through but nobody else can go through.
Then it feels like a real dead end to me.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
I
all
think
right. And I don't disagree with
I
you.
can see the smoke. I can see Stan thinking about this.
Yeah, yeah. We'll come up with something. That's an interesting idea, though.
It lowers the impact on the wildlife.
Yeah.
Mark?
And I guess I'd be, again, opposed to, trying to create that additional road in some way, shape, or form, be it narrow or whatever. If you're gonna allow development to the north of the right-of-way, so, again, eliminate a lot or two along the edge of the right-of-way, bring it to the other side of the road where you stop short, and put another house or two there, and again, loop the upper part, but you only have a single western connection between the upper section and the lower section. Something like that.
I don't think so.
I can see that being, just trying to visualize what we're talking about, I can see that being problematic for the public safety people, because now you have one loop and a bigger loop off of that loop with one entrance. That I think that could be problematic.
Yeah, we had kind of fooled around at one point with the idea of looping this side of the right road side of the power lines and then doing either a couple of small cul-de-sacs or a couple of shared driveways. And actually, we felt that public safety would have issues with it,
One heck of a shared driveway with
Yeah.
16 units on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't.
Right. And actually, we looked at doing a couple of cul-de-sacs to get a turnaround. You don't really end up
Okay.
mitigating
Yeah.
much pavement.
We really have beaten this thing into the
Yeah.
ground, believe me, at our end before we got to you.
We have to.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Can you go back to the other drawing, the compare plan,
Sure.
please, sir? I think this just shows us the difference, pretty graphic detail from where we started to where we are, so.
Beth, did you have a question or comment?
So along those lines, and it's kind of a good transition, can someone just briefly clarify the origin of the number of lots proposed? Because because I think, I'm still, this question about if we can keep the stormwater off or not, if I just don't understand.
It's just what was approved back in 2005. If you actually look at the bylaw, I forget the number, there was some ungodly number.
125 or
I
something.
think you could actually put 125 homes on this property.
If
Back-
you're looking-
Back when this
If you
was,
take away fish and wildlife.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean.
back when this was approved,
With the
that-
CMP?
yes, there was 35 house lots, and so we stuck with that. If you
Field plan.
work within the confines of the area that those 35 lots occupied, which was much more than what this occupies.
Which is what you see in red.
Yeah, which is what you see in red. You could probably put, if I recall correctly, I think it was 70?
No,
I don't remember.
Some ungodly number.
you don't want to go there.
Yeah, but in any event,
The important
it's just
thing-
based on what happened to be approved
Right, but this
15 years
is a
ago.
new permit.
So
this
Beth,
isn't a
at
modification.
the very beginning of the process, we had a yield plan calculation, and I'm going to get the technicalities wrong. Someone, could you briefly describe how you
Right.
arrive at a number for the yield
Right,
plan?
yeah, the yield plan was arrived at, it's called for in the bylaw. You have to assume that, you know, you look at building a realistic subdivision road, which they extended up into this open space here, and I forget what the exact number was, but it was probably in excess of 100 lots.
No.
No, wasn't that many? Okay.
The yield
But the
plan,
yield
That's
plan-
what I asked. But
I know,
I
it's
The
okay.
way it goes is,
understand.
I'll clarify that. The
I can
yield
do it
plan
very
that we
easily.
did, based on the constraints of the CMP from Fish and Wildlife, was 36 lots.
the requirement under the new OSRD regulation, if you choose to use the reduced location of the lots and smaller lots and less frontage, you get the count by creating the yield plan based on the existing zoning underlying, which requires, in this case, a 1 acre lot and 200 feet of frontage in a road that is similar to that. So in just amazing coincidence, the subdivision that was approved many, many years ago had that same requirement because that was a requirement back then and it hasn't changed. We just incorporated it into the yield plan today. So to get the same count, you could put a road out there with 200 feet of frontage in front of each lot and then 1 acre lot, and you'll come up with about 35 lots.
Yeah.
So the mathematics
Right. I have
restricted
that
it to
yield plan.
that.
in the
Now,
office.
they have
Just got the
additional
details.
ability under our zoning regulations to get bonus lots, which they chose not to apply for. So for instance, for every excessive, was it 5 acres, over 5%?
Over 50%.
Yeah.
Over 50%.
When you get over
So-
50%, so much more you add, you get more bonus
Right,
units.
so because they had so much open space, they were allowed to increase that yield plan by bonus, getting bonus recognition for it, but they chose not to do that. So we basically settled on the same number of lots.
That's right.
And we put on there a couple of two families.
Yeah.
So we ended up with 37 units.
And I appreciate that, and I also just want to comment that I really appreciate the dialogue that's happening here tonight and the way that the developer is, is listening and brainstorming, ideas about this, and that's why I just wanted to understand the background, because it does sound like the number of units, the number of lots is probably established at this point in time, but that there would still be opportunities for more low-impact development and considering density, which I know right now compared to zoning, this feels dense, but, doing duplexes and things like that would be a way to further reduce the amount of impervious area, the amount of disturbance on the site, and still getting those same numbers of housing units. So just, again, I really do want to stress that I really appreciate, the creative thinking, that seems to be transpiring in the conversation that's happening. So I did want to throw something like that out.
Yes, Marion?
Yes. So, Mr. Chairman, so I would like to thank Mr. Moulton for his considerations for this property to develop it in an environmental manner that we'd like to have it developed. And I appreciate what steps have been taken to cause that to happen. But I would like to ask for more. And so we've heard at other planning board hearings that the land above the power lines is really a very exceptional area environmentally in the Commonwealth. And we had Massachusetts Audubon Society and the National Watershed Association also offer testimony to that, and that this particular area above the power lines on this property is unique in the Commonwealth as a nesting area for turtles, for landing turtles. and that it really deserves a lot of consideration for protection. It deserves to be protected. And so I would like to ask again that Mr. Moulton agreed to sell that property to Mass Fish and Wildlife, who I know are interested in acquiring the property and have the ability, financial ability to do that, as does the Air Conservation Commission.
It's a fair comment.
It's out there. And really, I also really want to stress that I'm so glad that Mr. Moulton has agreed not to develop any of the land on the eastern side of the proposed road, so that Long Ponds will receive protection and not be graded. I think that's very important. But I really appreciate the fact that the land, that the lots have been tremendously reduced in size, and that have been pretty much congregated in that one area of the property, and that you're planning to leave 2 duplexes there, and I support Beth's preliminary suggestion that consider more duplexes in the 2. And so that's what I would
Thank you.
like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mark?
So, I didn't quite catch everything Marion said, but I think I got just of it, but I guess if she didn't say this, I guess maybe a twist on it could be, so what would it take to not develop the upper portion? As she said, I don't know if she said sell the whole thing to Fish and Wildlife, or just sell the northern portion to Fish and Wildlife. And what would it take to make that a palatable offer to Mr. Moulton? Maybe that's an interesting thing to consider.
Well, ideally, I would say, and have asked actually that Mr. Moulton would consider selling the whole property. That would be my preference. And but if Mr. Moulton were not interested in doing that, I would like to ask Mr. Moulton to please consider selling the property north of the power lines to Fish and Wildlife, because that is the land that is presently, most sensitive environmentally. And I don't know that I mentioned, I think everybody knows it's part of an area of critical environmental concern. In fact, I think there are 2 areas of critical environmental concern involved here.
Thank you. Did you want to?
I have a question. Since we have representatives that represent the owner and we have representatives from Fish and Wildlife, am I in the dark here? Is there something else going on? And I would amend Marion's request to include the power lines. If I was going to sell it, I'd sell them the area north of the developable area, including the power lines, not just north of the power lines, unless that's what she meant when she said it. But
Yeah, nobody's ever said that before. That's a good idea.
well, you
But
wouldn't
Yeah,
keep
you
the
wouldn't,
power
yeah.
line easement. You
Yeah.
sell them. You can't
But
build there. So
I know it.
Sell them what you don't need.
Yeah,
But my question is, is this planning board in the dark? Are we?
No.
Is there something else going on?
No,
that
there
we're
isn't.
not aware of?
I've spoken with Dave many times, and Ann and I have actually met with Dave. God, how many years? That was before the pandemic. There's been ongoing discussions for a long, long time between Dave Moulton and Ann.
We got a casual. I haven't
Yeah.
called him Dave yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. And he has no desire to sell. He has said that. I will continue to discuss that with him. I've done all of his work since 1985. If anybody has any influence on him, I do. But there is nothing going on that you don't know about.
Okay, I was just asking that through
Yeah.
the chair as a clarification, so thank you very much.
Yeah. But I certainly will. I have told him everything that Marion has said and everything that Ann has said, and I will continue to relay those messages.
Thank you. Yes,
I'm Stephanie Head.
can you speak louder, please?
Stephanie Head, 14 Wright Road. I guess I'm just gonna echo that sentiment because I feel like a happy medium, instead of what was proposed many years ago, 70 houses, whatever, 100 houses, a happy medium to the concerns that a lot of us have now, environmental, traffic. If we could potentially just get rid of some of the houses and, obviously Mr. Bolton wants to make his money back, and if he doesn't want to sell to someone willing to pay the full value, he could still make money back on however many houses are sold with power lines. But if eliminating some of them that are above the power lines, if not all of them, could go far at a good compromise between the neighborhood, between the Fish and Wildlife, just my 2 cents, Conservation Commission, something just, food for thought.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
John Cadigan, Autumn Ridge Drive. The current zoning bylaw in the town of Ayer, does it currently allow multifamily residential structures?
In the zoning area? In the underlying zoning?
You can do duplexes here. Under the underlying zoning does not allow more than a duplex in this district. You could do 2-unit dwellings in this district, but you would need a variance to put multifamily greater than 2 units.
You need a what?
A variance.
Yes, that's where I'm getting to.
Right.
Are multifamily residential structures permitted in the town?
They're permitted in town. Yeah.
In certain districts.
Not
Yeah.
this district?
Not that
No,
district.
not
This is the A1 district, which is the most rural part of Ayer.
Now,
Yes.
going to the zoning board of appeals, Ayer is one of the few communities in the Commonwealth, I think there's maybe a dozen, that permit use variances. And this allows the zoning board of appeals to permit a use in a zone not otherwise permitted. So it is possible that a presentation could be made to them or a proposal made to them. And to be clear, the zoning board of appeals is a judicial body that can't be lobbied as such or brought into some kind of side meeting to negotiate. They deal with the proposal brought before them and see if it meets the requirements of 48. And there are use variances are possible in this town, whereby you could do a use in a zone not otherwise permitted for sufficient reason. Among the things you have to look at is whether the proposed use derogates from the intent of the bylaw, whether it meets the overall conditions, doesn't violate others. There are 4 criteria that I won't go into detail on. But it is within the realm of possibility to do a use variance. If that were a consideration, and instead of single-family residences down here, consider some form of multifamily, maybe you're over 55 to get the size down, you could possibly, using Autumn Ridge Farm as a model, which was done, I'm told, by 40B, but there are other ways of doing it. Would that be a way of getting the density that he requires, the number of units that he requires, in a multifamily residential structure holding 4 to 8 units, common development, and take the pressure off the north side of that power line?
Potentially it could be, though I do believe that very early, perhaps even last year when they first brought in a definitive plan, we asked that question, and I believe the answer was
there was no interest.
Want to.
The answer was, I'm sorry, I couldn't get that.
There was no interest. Mr. Moulton builds single-family homes. I had to really lean on him to include duplexes He's been in business for 60 years. He likes to build what he likes to build.
Well, out of, just as.
So he would have, I can say categorically, he would have no interest in multifamily.
I used to live in a molten home in the town of Westford.
Yeah, no, yeah, so Dave
So
builds
I
a
lived
nice
in a large
home.
single family one. But you know, as times change, people get creative in the face of important considerations.
But I can say
We
he's
can't-
not gonna do it. He's not gonna do
I propose that as an option
Yeah.
into consideration to the board.
But
The other question I would raise is, is there a best practice, very standard, probably just the best practice at this point, that limits how close a habitable structure can get to a high-tension power line as a function of that line voltage? As time goes on, any high voltage line will create a magnetic field, an electric field around it. And if you're close enough to it, it can be problematic. So I didn't know over time if anybody's developed standards for keep-outs around the coordinated power lines.
Not that we're aware of, no.
Ken, did you have a comment?
Be worth thinking about though.
I'm sorry?
Might be worth thinking about.
I don't think, to address through the chairman to Mr. Cadigan, I don't think you were aware of the fact that early on, we asked some of those same kinds of questions, and we kind of went down some of those lines as we were trying to, or create the smaller, project and density and whatnot, and that's when we got the same answer that Mr. Collins just gave us. But on top of that, as you know, I think you told us you were on the Board of Appeals in Westford, or?
In Westford, yes.
So in order to go to the Board of Appeals, you have to have a variance that's based on a condition of
Hardship is one of the criteria.
Hardship is one of the criteria. There's no hardship here. He has an approved subdivision sitting there. So, our goal, I think, was to make everything smaller, make it within the new subdivision regulations, maintain open space, and go as far as we could with that. I think that's what I had. But
No, the hardship would.
there would be no hardship here. And there's two criteria, actually, that we hold very highly, and I think our chairman agrees, is it's got to be the hardship, but it also has to be proven that it's in a beneficial interest to the town of Ayer that we're doing it. We have to really prove that there's a benefit to the multifamily. I don't think it would help with traffic or with any of the other situations that we're trying to study. It would just change the way the thing is built.
No, the benefit to the town is the considerations that Marion has brought up, and others have brought up over time
Yeah.
in the conservation side. And I recognize too that from looking at the Conservation Commission report and listening to some of the debates past couple of evenings about the time you guys have taken to look at it, a lot of due diligence has gone into this by the boards, both boards. And I just feel a tension over that north side.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if, hearing that, there are some options that might be pursued. I hear a lot of tension in the Conservation Commission's reports and concerns about that area.
Yeah.
Mark, for the findings, do we have to have a vote each individual, or can we do the findings as a whole, in all four in one vote?
You could do it as a whole in one vote. Okay, so I wanted to reiterate for the board, if the board is inclined to act on the plan this evening, that there are three distinct actions that the board would need to take. One would be to consider the waivers that have been identified, and I know there'll be some discussion about those as well, and what constitutes a dead end being one of those. The second would be the conservation findings that are necessary for section 10.1 of the zoning bylaw. We get waivers, conservation findings, and then finally would be the action on the plan itself, which would be approve with modifications or deny, according to the statute. So which
I'd like to start with the conservation, since we're engaged in a discussion now
Okay,
with
right.
the findings
Yep,
of the
yep.
conservation report.
Okay, so for people who are interested, I have a staff report to the right of the agenda on a little handout table over there if you want to follow along. So, basically the conservation findings that I wrote up reflect what seemed to be the sense of the board based on previous meetings where we discussed the conservation analysis and the conservation recommendations from the Conservation Commission. And they look at other design criteria. So I can read those into the record right now if you'd like.
Please do.
So I preface my remarks that say, I prefer the development be kept south of the power line easement as well, because I believe it affords the greatest protection to the wildlife. But nonetheless, I recognize that the applicant has made efforts to modify the subdivision's layout to minimize the environmental impacts of a 35-lot subdivision by, and I list what they've done to address the environmental concerns. This is on page 3 of the conservation findings in the report. Number 1 in their efforts was shortening the length of the original loop road so as to pull development further to the south. Number 2, keeping most of the house lots and areas to be disturbed within the area previously cleared so as to minimize impacts to areas of mature forest. And I want to give some kudos on that one because as far as I can tell, the area that they're proposing to develop in is the area of secondary growth that has come up since the mid-2000s when they cleared that for the road. So I think there is very little impact on mature forest trees in this iteration. Number 3, eliminating proposed house lots on the eastern side of the road to minimize impacts from development and stormwater to Long Pond. Reflecting the ecological importance of Long Pond is emphasized in both the BSC group analysis and recommendations of the Conservation Commission. In number 4, providing approximately 87% of the tract as proposed open space compared to the minimum requirement of 50% in the OSRD bylaw. And so on page 4, the next page, I go through some mitigation measures that could be used in the...
Can you pause for just a second?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Could we consider putting a 5 in there, which would
Sure.
which would be the finding that the stormwater basins and stormwater detention systems would be reevaluated by the applicant as part of the definitive plan. We find that they've considered that and are going to do that as part of the definitive plan.
Okay. So stormwater basins, especially east, on the eastern slope to Long Pond, are to be reevaluated for the definitive plan submittal. So those are the items that I wrote up that I believe the applicant took to minimize the environmental impacts while still retaining a yield of 35 lots. The discussion at page 5 are just some of the mitigation measures that could be discussed in the definitive plan. We're not going to go through all those now, like the turtle underpasses, limits on the use of berms, limits on road salt, all that sort of thing. That's just to show what mitigation could look like. Okay, so...
Excuse me.
Page 4.
Excuse me, on page 4. I was interested in reading this, and we have limits on the use of road salt, sand, or the de-icing agents. It's my assumption that the town of Ayer will actually be involved in de-icing the roads up there. So I'm curious if we propose a limit on the proponent, how that actually gets...
This is just things to investigate. Not all
okay.
of these may be realistic or
Thank you.
achievable. But these are things that I would like the applicant and our engineering consultant to look at. Doesn't mean that necessarily we will implement all these, but these are just a list of things that might help mitigate impacts to wildlife
Got
and
it.
the natural habitat. So as far as the findings themselves on page 4, that was a long preamble. The conservation findings that I drafted per section 10.13B of the zoning bylaw. These are findings that the planning board needs to make prior to acting on the plan. These are my draft findings. If you want to add or modify these, planning board, feel free. Number 1, the planning board finds that the proposed amount and configuration of open space meets and indeed exceeds the amount of open space required in section 10.13C of the Ayer zoning bylaw, and that's the 50%, and they have 87. Number 2, the board finds that the development envelope for the proposed 35 lot subdivision is configured in such a way as to minimize impacts to areas of mature forest in the slope down to Long Pond.
Excuse me, Mark, may I ask a quick
Yes.
question on this one? This may be, the second sentence reads, such a way as to minimize impacts to areas of mature forest and the slope down to Long Pond.
Right.
I'm assuming you mean mature forest throughout the area?
Correct, throughout.
I might suggest a comma before the word and.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep. Number 3 would be the board therefore finds that the proposed preliminary subdivision plan meets the purpose and intent of the open space residential development section of the Ayer zoning bylaw. So it's just saying it meets the OSRD purpose and intent. Number 4, the board therefore finds that with appropriate mitigation measures, as described above, again, which are informal at this time, that environmental impacts can be mitigated against such that the subdivision has minimal impact on the surrounding mature forest land, comma, and Long Pond. So that is my attempt to come up with conservation findings. If the board would like to add or subtract
Now,
or
Didn't
modify.
Ken just suggest a 5th one for that? Or is that related
That
to-
was on the earlier,
No.
that was on
Oh,
the,
that's
that was
wrong
on the
section.
rationale
On the
for
rationale, okay.
what they've done to minimize the impacts.
Okay.
The findings themselves are a little bit distinct from that, even though they overlap.
So I would suggest on 4 to strike the article. The board therefore finds that with appropriate mitigation measures, and not be specific unless you're going to list them.
Oh, strike the 1 through 8.
No.
Yeah, so
No, the word "the."
The word.
the word "the" in sentence 4, the board therefore finds that with, after the word "with,"
Well, there's an extra word there.
Yeah.
just take out the "the."
can
So with
figure out
appropriate
very quickly.
mitigation
Oh,
measures.
yes, sorry.
Sorry.
Yes. Yep,
Because we're not specifying what they are at the preliminary level.
correct.
So do I have a motion for these findings?
I move that the planning board accept the findings as read by Mr. Archambault and with the edits from the board.
Seconded.
Any further discussion?
So I just have a question about timing. So we're doing this in at the appropriate stage here because we got the conservation analysis and
Right.
its response from the Conservation Commission.
Yes.
This is the right step now.
Right, yeah, section 10.13 talks about the planning board making conservation findings to,
At this step, during the
after we
preliminary.
receive the Concom's
Okay,
recommendation.
just checking that, thank you.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Findings have been made and accepted.
Okay.
So now, we have the waivers.
Yes.
And we have landscaping plan, signage, road striping. Third, test hole data. 4, configuration of dead end turnaround, and 5, length of the subdivision road.
Right.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Please do.
We have waiver requests in front of us, but we don't have a definitive plan, so it's my understanding that it's the goal of this evening's meeting to give the proponent a sense of the
Not to
direction
vote
we're
on,
going.
just a sense of
That's
where we're
right.
going.
And I just want to say that out loud so that everyone in the room knows
Right.
where we are on this.
We are
We're
not
still in
actually-
the definitive
right.
world.
Preliminary.
I mean,
We're not
I'm sorry.
Preliminary.
Thank you so much.
Preliminary.
Mr. Gillis, thank you so much.
Thanks for making that so clear.
Yeah.
Thanks for muddying the waters, Jeff.
Right.
So as a matter of, we can't vote on these.
Yeah, you really,
but-
Building
exactly.
permit, But we, as
Give us
a
a
good
sense.
faith,
Yes.
we give the applicant a sense so that they can take that feedback and incorporate it to what they present to us as a
Into the
definitive.
design, right.
Right.
And I checked with our council, and she said it was appropriate and proper, and indeed necessary to have a sense of the board on the waivers. You know, if in the definitive plan, some new information comes forward from engineering or other sources that indicates that the waivers are not warranted, then, you know, the board has the full power to take those up then.
So if we start the landscaping plan.
Yeah, which that one's confusing.
It is confusing, because I thought the issue was that you just didn't want to have to measure every 12-inch tree.
Well, it's multiple, and it may well be that we should just say, let's talk about that once we submit the definitive,
Okay.
which would be fine. Part of it was precisely that.
And can I ask you a follow-up on the 12-inch?
Yeah.
Were you saying that you didn't want to count them like all over the entire tract or just the developed area? Where are we talking about?
Well, kind of both, but
Because my sense is there's no point in counting the trees in the area that's going to
They're
develop.
not
So
gonna-
leave it alone.
yeah,
It's
that's
only
right.
the developed area, the development envelope that seems germane.
But
Do you-
then what I would actually like to do, and you tell me if this is crazy, is we would only identify ones that have to be removed.
Because.
Well, there's engineering involved in
Yeah,
locating
okay,
all
yeah,
of
just
them.
one, yeah.
And then the other thing, just as a statement, we are gonna bring you a landscape plan showing
Okay.
restoration areas and also a planting within the boulevard entrance, assuming that you like that idea, and other areas. So we are gonna bring a landscape plan.
Oh, okay, so
Should be
just,
also
I would say
landscape.
if at the definitive stage, you're gonna ask for the waiver request, just make it as specific as possible.
Yeah, I
Okay,
will.
Thank you. Okay.
And I think we probably know what we need to know on that.
Okay. Jeff, did you have something to say?
No, thank you very much, Chair. What I was going to say is, having done this process before, I think it, yeah, in other words, inside the envelope, and, you know, typical identifying trees, breast height and stuff like that. But there was a request, I think, to identify any species that might be,
Specimen trees, whatever the
Specimen
heck that
trees.
is.
I have a hard time believing there are any specimen trees, because this was cleared.
Well, this is a
Yeah.
question I have, and that's one of the things I know we want to talk about, and I don't know if, I'm not that way up on the specimen stuff, but once we have a definitive plan and we know where the expectation of the foundations go, I think, Mr. Chair, we end up in a position where we can better identify what trees are
Correct.
in the way and not in
Yeah.
the way.
That's fair.
And I also would request, and keep requesting throughout that, you know, it's not a situation where we go in and rip everything down, build houses, and wait for it to grow back up.
Exactly.
We've stated many, many times, it's thin soil up there. Let's not remove what's already established, if we can avoid it.
Right,
That's my request.
fair enough.
So thank you.
Does that satisfy you?
Absolutely,
As a sense?
absolutely.
Okay, how about the signage and road striping? What?
Did everybody finish?
What, the
On the
landscape?
landscaping plan?
No, you can, if you have, I didn't hear you speak up, Ken, so
Oh.
please go ahead.
A little ambiguous about how we were
Hmm,
non-voting, voting.
I have the section here in front of me from the, subdivision regulations, so I'm just making a recommendation, there are 7 items under H, which he refers to, that you are clear that you identify item 1, 2, 3, 4, whichever item you're gonna request in the waiver.
Yeah, be
You're
very
not- certainly not gonna give you
specific.
the whole waiver for the
That's
whole
correct.
section.
That's
No,
what
that's
I'd
correct.
asked
Yeah.
them, right, to be specific.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
right.
Got it.
Right. And that seems amenable, like.
Yes.
Okay.
And then look at our prior rulings for Panther Place, we bumped the 12 up to 24.
Right.
Right, so it's
Yeah.
kind of like specimen trees,
Yeah.
with a larger diameter.
Yeah.
We had a lot of mature oaks in there that just needed to stick
Yeah.
around, and they found a way for most of them.
Yeah, and I'll bet a fair amount of money there's none that size here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there were one,
Yeah,
I
they,
didn't know.
they would have been very well fertilized over the last 15 years to get that size.
Number 2, the signage and
Yeah,
road
the
striping.
signage and the road striping, what's the,
And again, all we were trying to get is we like the idea of this kind of looking like the network of roads that leads to it. And I think if you suddenly then have a subdivision road that has white stripes on either side and a line down the middle, it has a very urban look. And especially if we're going to think about maybe going from 22 down to 20, is all that striping necessary? I just like your sense on it.
And I don't believe what Wright Road is striped, right?
I don't believe it
I don't
is.
believe it is, right? I don't
And
recall.
especially if we were gonna try to look at on the north side, going down to even narrower than that, 12 feet,
Yeah.
the stripe would take up half of the road.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so if I may, Mr. Chair.
Please, sir.
So again, I brought only the cover picture of it, but Sustainable Neighborhood Road Design is a guide from May 2011, sponsored by the American Planning Association,
Cool.
okay? And really what it talks about, and I'm not sure if I copied the one picture I was really interested in here, but the sense is, let's not put please excuse me, people who live in this area of town, but we have a development in town that's got 127 houses built on 46-foot wide roads.
Yeah, then that's
Okay.
crazy. Yeah.
And we end up with an albatross
Yeah.
by the end of the day.
You do.
So I like the way you put it, Mr. Dillis, and that is in the spirit of the current neighborhood, more of a neighborhood type road than, yeah, I don't have this, but this is, there's some great
Gee,
pictures in
can I
here.
take that off your hand?
Yours.
Thank you.
Thank you. But I actually, and Mark and I discussed that, but that's just a document that's been floating around my
So I
life for a
think
while.
we have your sense.
Do you have
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'm happy to share it with everybody on the board. I just.
No, that's
at some
fine.
point.
Again, we're just trying to give them a sense.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Any other comments about the striping? Test hole data then. Test hole data.
So if I understand the regulations correctly, and I think I do, you normally would require test hole data for the full length of the subdivision road, and any areas that are going to be utilized for drainage. Again, if I understand correctly what's gone on in the past, I believe we've already submitted years ago and reviewed the information on where the road was. What we're suggesting is that we will do additional testing where the drainage is, that we end up showing, because I think that's the only thing that hasn't been reviewed, because we're gonna be showing
All
drainage
right,
in
so
new
I have to ask a
areas.
question.
I think in the regulations, if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
I think a test hole is required every 200 feet along the center line.
along the road.
And we all know what's there.
And
Part of
plus
it-
we had done
So
that.
that's my follow-up question is, so does the intervening time make a difference? Is the old test hole data still relevant?
Yeah, because the soils wouldn't change.
Yeah, the soils
Because the
haven't
soil, I
changed.
just wanted to be clear.
Yeah.
That's my question.
Might be deeper, but
Yeah,
Okay.
It'd be harder.
it might be harder or deeper. But
And I think
yeah.
the waiver would be for test holes along the roadway, but
But you
not
still
for the
test,
drainage.
right,
not
for any
the-
new places you haven't done before.
that's
Right,
correct.
right.
Right, because the whole point is that the road test hole data you've done.
Mhm.
And you're just saying, could we just do test holes for the new infrastructure
That's correct.
Correct.
Yeah, and-
construction, right?
If I may, just to, the previous road test hole data was done. The road has now been changed dramatically north of the power lines. So I'm going to assume you're going to be doing test hole data on that section of the road
Right.
if you haven't already done it in those areas.
Right. You can do that.
That's correct,
I mean,
yeah.
And that's fair.
I
Yeah.
think that's what we're talking
It's
about.
actually only a portion of that, because that's
Exactly.
where it comes
Exactly.
down,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't think there's a whole lot of it.
There isn't.
If you lay
No,
road
there
on
isn't.
top of road.
Yeah,
And
It's in
and
fact,
again,
it's that
Stan, I
little-
think we're gonna
that
find what
arch.
we know.
Yep.
yeah.
Right, right.
There's
But we
ledge,
gotta do the
yeah.
work, I hate to say it.
Yeah, no, and that's fine.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Okay, so
It's gotta be done.
you're satisfied then? Okay,
Yep.
good. Anyone else have any comments
Yeah,
at the test hole data? Do you feel that you have a felt
Absolutely,
sense?
good
Okay.
sense.
I turn around. Who wants
Before
to
we
begin
get
here?
to the controversial ones, I have one that I didn't include that I don't think we really finished the conversation on,
What's that, sir?
which was streetlights.
Oh, yeah.
So what I had suggested was that I thought it was overkill to have streetlights at regular intervals over this whole thing. And I would think you would want one at the intersection with Wright Road, you would want one where the Loop Road intersection is, and perhaps on one side or the other of the power lines, and then perhaps at the furthest extent right about there. And that would make some degree of sense for safety rather than every couple of 100 feet.
I do believe that also the Concom report wanted to minimize the.
That's right.
That they recommended that. You know, my gut sense is, as long as public safety is fine with the proposal, I'm fine. I don't know, that's my felt sense. I'm
Yeah.
not talking to speak for the rest of the board.
I'm going
Jeff?
to talk about this because we kind of have a chance to get it right. And I think if I recall the conversation before, I'm assuming underground utilities through this project?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. We had talked, I'm not sure if it's this project or not, we had talked about the opportunity, if it's needed in the future, to put a light up or two.
Yep.
We're never going to know until it
No,
gets
what
built.
Dave has done in
And-
the past
yeah.
is actually put in the infrastructure, but not the fixtures.
He's already got the infrastructure in there for the fire.
Yeah, so I mean, if
But
you
yeah,
want,
yeah.
you know, the electric,
Yeah.
Conduit.
the conduit, we're happy to do that,
And, you
and
know,
that makes sense.
Conduit and a box or something.
Yeah.
Whatever is needed from a technical standpoint. But the other question I have is, and I've actually never gone and seen the process over the projects you've done nearby, but a lot of the projects these days, especially that are done in areas, some of this, use lighting on the houses.
Yeah, and actually Dave did
And
that.
and I don't know how far these houses stand back from the road, but that in the overall lighting footprint, if you will, houses also offer, or a post light or something in front of the house becomes an additional light in the project.
We actually, well, if I could
And I don't have
say,
enough information to actually talk about
Yeah.
that. That's what I'm saying.
over on the Groton side, what Dave had done was at the intersections, and then in the over 55 component, there were no street lights, and we did post lanterns in front of every house. But I understand Groton is a different community than Ayer. Groton does not like street lights, and in my lifetime, I've seen them rip them all down, put them all back, and then rip them all down again. But I'm sensitive to light pollution. If I were living on Wright Road, I would not want to see Fenway Park across the street with all these street lights. But times might change, so having the infrastructure there so that you could put it is a nice idea.
Yeah, so I think we had that conversation
Yeah,
1 or 2
but I
years
like
ago.
at intersections, I
Yeah.
think that's good for safety.
And public safety is an important piece to it. They have to weigh in on it.
That's my. yeah.
But I think it's an aggregate question that can't be, I personally can't opine on it until I know either the post lights, mailbox, if it's gonna be a mail kiosk, how will that be lit, if it's at the intersection? It becomes an aggregate thing. And then,
Shop and Save's gonna have a couple of extra lights, maybe we can grab.
Yeah.
you want a 30 footer?
So
We
my-
got drones.
My gut is that we felt sense is that we're willing to work with.
Yeah,
you.
okay.
Have a
So
conversation.
we'll come up with something and then we'll
Right.
talk about it,
And
yeah.
again, leaning heavily on conservation's request.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, we had a beautiful blood moon the other night. Guess what I looked at it over
Yeah.
at one point? It was coming up over that hill.
Air
Yeah.
moving and storage.
Yeah.
Huh?
Air moving and storage.
Yeah.
Almost. In the middle of it. But yeah, I saw when it comes up over that hill from my house.
Yeah.
So any further comments on the street light issue?
Okay, now we can get to the
Dead
controversial
end
stuff.
turnaround. Who wants to open up this?
Well, I'll just say, as you see my staff report, I think it's a dead end, you know, because it's got one way in and one way out. Regardless of the boulevard, though, take it from there.
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
In Bob's letter, Bob, I think mistakenly said it's 650 feet to the intersection. It's 515 feet to the
To
intersection.
the intersection.
From Wright Road to
You mean
where
from
the
this
lawn
point?
Yeah,
is. That's
to that point.
550
Yeah.
feet.
Right.
Yeah. And could I just say one thing before you decide what you want to tell us? And I tried to express this in my letter. We're not opposed to putting another road. I just don't think it's needed. I really don't. But if you want us to, we'll put it there. That's fine. But it's a sin and a shame, I
No,
think.
And that was never my argument. That my
No, I
argument
know.
is I'm just trying to stick
Yeah.
to
Right.
the regs and the bylaw, and, and if a waiver's needed, I'm not opposed to it necessarily. I'm just.
No, and I've got to acknowledge, I understand it is a stretch not to call this a dead-end road. But I think it's actually a good idea in this instance.
I actually disagree with you.
All right.
Because if,
This is fine.
if,
After all
even
these
if,
years.
even if that boulevard weren't there, if that road got blocked, yes, all those houses would be cut off, but any other than that first 515 feet, there's two ways to get to all
No,
those
that's true.
residences.
Okay.
So,
Which is actually better than a lollipop cul-de-sac, because if that road gets blocked, there's no way to get to
I
anything.
understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes, please, Jeff.
I've done a lot of thinking about this. Done a lot of thinking about this because I've sat in this room for almost 7 years, and we discuss dead end roads a lot in this town. So,
Yeah.
by way of history on dead end roads, do a little bit of research, and I am not a legal expert in any way, shape, or form. But I come across Mass General law that says a dead end road has to be less than 500 feet. Why? Because a fire truck carries 500 feet of hose. Okay. That's one reason, and that's now been extended to 600 feet, 650 feet. So here in Ayer, we talk to our public safety group, and they say, okay, it's fine with us if you pepper in some infrastructure, hydrants become shorter than 650 feet. I said, okay. Then I look at the developments we've done here in town prior to our bylaws, our current bylaws, and the OSRDs. We've recently approved a whole bunch of stuff that's I want to call this a single entrance, the right road intersection. Okay? I don't see anywhere where this ends. I don't see anywhere where there's a cul-de-sac or a bulb at the end. So I look at this as a neighborhood street. Then I got thinking to myself, well, I spent an awful lot of time in Ayer riding my bike around. You just can't get there from here. So I asked the town what their street inventory was. There's 197 recognized streets in Ayer. 39 of them are dead ends. Fairly high percentage, almost 20%. And then I took the map of Ayer and checked all the streets I would consider single entry streets. Wright Road, Snake Hill Road, Hell's Way. All of the streets that lead into there are single entry streets. And then I start looking around the rest of town. We got a lot of streets in town that only have a single entry. So this board member's approach to this is, if we're looking at a neighborhood type road where it's not a hugely built road, it's not going to attract traffic from all the towns around us, it truly is a destination road, I'm not convinced that this fits in the dead end road category. Whether or not we want to argue that or not, that's up to, that's for a later time. So we have, in the planning board, prior to many of these members sitting here, have gone ahead and said, fire department, what do you think? And Mark actually did that for us for this one. And they came back with, we don't see this as being a problem. That's a quote. I'm not going to quote him, but that's it. So, I can't be convinced, and I'm sorry to stand again on you to see it the way you, I'm not convinced this is a dead end road.
Okay. No, I think it can go either way, I really do.
All right, if people want to know what the fire department said, I thought it was important to check with them one more time. So this is from Lieutenant Bob Bozick, who works for Chief Johnson, of course. Hello, Mark. The chief and I would answer no to both, meaning no, it's not a dead end, in their opinion, as long as a roadway has an unobstructed minimum width from the entrance that continues through the entire loop. And that's the fire department response.
Could I ask Mr. Chair that Mark preface that by giving us the email he sent to the fire department asking the question?
Right, yeah, I sent him a picture of this,
Okay.
which they've seen before, but I wanted to make sure that they were on the same page after all these months. you know, so I sent them a picture of this, and I said, would you consider this a dead-end road system? And what I just mentioned is what they came back with.
Do you have a sufficient
I
sense
do.
of where we are?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that leaves us with the last, is the length of the subdivision road.
Which it's shorter than it otherwise was.
I
We need
feel
a
like we
waiver
covered a
for
lot
that.
of this in just the previous
Okay,
conversation.
yeah, there was overlap.
There's kind of
Yeah,
overlap,
yeah,
it's
there's
basically the
overlap.
same thing, right?
Right,
It does.
right.
I mean, because they're
Yeah.
basically two ways of approaching the same
Yeah.
issue, the length and whether, how it
Right,
ends.
one has to do with the length, the other just is how it ends.
And again, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, it's
Please,
difficult
Jeff.
without a definitive plan to know. There's test hole,
Yeah.
there's technical work that needs to be done. We may be looking at this very, very differently.
Depending on what the
Depending
final
on what is,
engineering comes to.
what the engineering, how the engineering comes back.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But it is, I mean, I consider myself almost a neighbor, a resident of that neighborhood, very close to that neighborhood. This is what we got,
Right.
already over there.
Can I ask a question though?
Of course you can.
That's not really related to the length of the road, but to get a better sense, if we explored the idea of a 20-foot width rather than 22,
Good question.
is that something that you guys like the idea of?
I would, we will look into it. I mean, in general, it's good LID or you
Yeah.
know, practice to reduce impervious
Assuming
surface.
public safety
Well,
likes
speaking
it.
of
Yeah.
the fire department.
Yeah.
they-
Yeah.
But that's the thing, they just
Yeah,
said,
right.
as long as the
Right.
minimum width is
Yeah,
met.
assuming they like it.
That's,
Yeah.
And as I said, we have a computer program where we can take the fire truck and drive it around there and produce a plan that demonstrates to them that they can get around the site.
You're not gonna go spend $800,000 on a truck to drive around?
You could drive
what was
the truck
that,
around.
Ken?
Good luck
Can't
getting
do
I'm
that
sorry,
till-
Jeff, Ken,
Sorry.
what did?
Well, in response to that question, I don't have it, I have it here someplace, but
Yeah.
I'm not gonna look it up right now. I thought the road might have been 24 feet the way it's designed now. I think that might have been the standard we have for this length of road. But to go to 20, there is an example of a 20-foot road in town that's the Nashua Street extension, which I've walked, driven, and so forth. I don't find that to be a very easy.
Yeah.
20 feet is pretty narrow.
Okay, so
So I'd say
22 might be
I'd say
better.
double check the requirement in the,
Yeah.
which I think I already did.
And
Maybe to go to 22 would be a,
And if I may, in
thought.
the
Okay.
spirit of finding
If it's
ways
two
to
ways.
minimize the impact, neck downs on sections of the road that aren't lived upon, like under the wires.
Yeah,
yeah,
That's what
story.
we're thinking about. is
yeah, and
how do we,
that's a really good idea.
how do we juggle,
Yeah,
you know, we gotta keep, we want to have as little impact as possible on the native residents there. And so, but we have to,
yeah, okay. No, thank you.
So, you
Yeah.
got your felt sense?
I have.
All right, that leaves us to the big kahuna here. Which is does the board feel that it's ready to act on the preliminary plan tonight?
I do.
I feel ready.
Mhm.
Nathan?
Yes.
Jeff?
yes, sir.
Julie, I saw you nod, Ken just said yes. So I believe the options are approve, deny, or approve with modifications. So I think I wanted to discuss the approve with modifications options. Mark, would that be what you were suggesting on page 4? Is that what you were thinking for the approve with modifications, or are those really just items for discussion?
You know, that the more I think about it, the statute and, you know, the law books that I look at, they're not very clear on that. When I was thinking back to Shaker Mill Pond, we actually had modifications that we asked them to make to do the actual road.
Specific ones, yeah.
Specific, you know, and please make this section of it duplexes, which they did. You know, we had, you know, substantial recommendations that changed the design a little bit that they adhered to in the definitive plan. In this case, I think we had a really good discussion on all of these items, but I don't think they rise to the level of a modification per se.
That's what I was
I think
thinking.
it's more of a straight approval.
That's what I was thinking too,
Right.
because it seems that we've already, by this discussion, the waivers and the felt sense, and all the previous discussion we had about the COMCOM report, we've already presented to you some of the things that we want you to think about when you present
Yes.
the definitive. And so that I'm aligned with you on this, Mark. I think it really is, it's approval or denial at this stage, because in the definitive, we'll get to have that deep conversation on engineering, all the details, where we can make relevant decisions that we can't make now because we don't have the plan in front of us.
That's right.
Does that sound reasonable?
Does.
So, to proceed, I think we just
It
need
would just be a
a
motion.
motion and then
a vote.
in the vote.
Yeah.
Move to approve the preliminary plan for Stratton Hill. I don't have the date and time in front of me. Do you, Mr.
I
Diskins?
brought the plan with me, I think.
Yeah, with the revisions through the latest.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it'll be on that.
Should be on,
If you could scroll down.
I got it as
please.
10/7/22.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
the
that
latest
sounds
version.
about right.
Yep.
Yes, if you just,
Oh, did you finish?
I don't have the actual date and time on it,
Yeah,
so.
October
Well,
7th.
it's October 7th.
Thank
That
you.
is the most recent.
As submitted of October 7th, 2022.
I have a
Seconded.
second. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Please do.
There is one modification.
I'm game,
Please.
MVP, brother.
Ken is
I don't know, there's some kind of a walk shown on C2, this black line.
Oh, yeah, we were thinking that as part of the open space, we'd create a walkway through there.
Okay,
So,
thank you, that's all I wanted to
That's-
ask.
As part of the whole restoration of that lower end, where it's
Okay.
all been disturbed, and where we moved the road over, that's kind of where the old road was. We thought we'd create a walking path there.
Okay.
But may I ask if you, Mr. Chair, when you say create a walking path, leave it as it was, or actually put down a surface of some sort?
I'll leave it dirt. or
I think it
gravel,
was gonna be
but-
gravel, yeah.
But, you know.
As it was, yeah,
Right,
in its
and
natural
not leave
state.
it 24 feet wide
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the strip that's in there now.
Okay.
Yep.
Rehab it, get some plantings in there and rehab that whole area that's been
So,
disturbed.
so I have a sense that that won't be a paved area.
Okay.
And the intent was to have access to some of the infrastructure that's already buried there.
That and just
Just
just to restore that area, 'cause
Yeah.
it's a wasteland now.
Mm.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's unanimously approved.
Well, I can't thank you enough, and thank you so much for all of the time and patience that you've put into this, really. You guys have really put a lot of effort into this.
This is the first
Obviously-
inning.
Yeah, so I just have a quick question.
Another
Do
batch.
you have, obviously, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but do you
Yeah.
have a felt sense about a rough timeline when you think you would be ready to present it definitive?
No, I would say sometime after the first of the year.
Yeah, we talked
fair.
about that the other day and figured
Just-
right after the first of the year, I
So I would
think.
ask you to keep in close communication
Yep.
with Mark, because he has to prepare the RFP for the third-party engineer review.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could just keep him posted about your timeline.
Yeah, that
It just
sounds.
helps.
Yeah.
I was glad you didn't say next week.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
No, geez.
No, but you know, actually, if you think about
Do it
it,
next week.
if you look at the
I'll bring it in
calendar,
tomorrow.
that's around the corner, so
Yeah.
I'd
Boy,
do
it is
the
around the
RFP.
corner. It really is.
Yeah.
It's-
We're not gonna
it's
see each other for Thanksgiving, but we'll
Yeah.
see each other for New Year's Eve.
We're
I'm
Yeah.
talking
sure.
7 weeks, roughly, right?
Yeah, so I'd do it now, because it takes a while.
Well, I couldn't get the RFP out until we knew that this was
Yeah.
the plan,
Right,
so.
right.
Right.
The hours, so thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll get out of your hair. Thank you.
The hour's late, so I'm hoping we can compress the final elements
you.
here. Thank
Yep.
you.
Town planner update. Yeah, all I have is the very back of the packet that I have on the table today is actually an application for the next meeting on the 22nd, which is a simple site plan for an addition to a industrial building on Bly Street. Yep, so it's relatively small, but it, you know, it does meet the site plan criteria. Charlie brought that to my attention. I worked with the guy, you know, he needed to get in quickly, so that'll be very simple.
Mr. Sorry, Mark,
Look at that,
may I ask,
yes.
what is the intended use of the building?
It might be top secret, actually.
Yeah, it's a great organization, top secret organization.
Yeah, I do not.
What?
know.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Are you
I
being serious?
misunderstood. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah. One of
misunderstood.
the most incredible companies in air.
Yeah, I was thinking,
Yeah.
excuse me, Mr. Diskin and Mr. Archibald, I thought it was the building next to that building.
Okay.
Thank you very
Oh,
much.
So I'm not sure that.
I'm
you
not gonna,
tell us that.
You guys aren't joking?
I retract
No,
my question.
No, this conversation.
I retract my question, thank you.
Government
We don't even know, oh, it's a government
It's a
contract?
government
Yeah, it's a
contractor.
government
Yeah.
thing,
All right, that would explain the little green men.
Go down and drive by it, you'll see.
Yeah,
See the-
yeah.
Okay, yes, so, go ahead.
Only other thing is I also put in the draft, speaking of the engineering RFP, a draft that I've been working on, and Dan has some input into this.
Okay.
Please look at that over the next few weeks and get any comments to me so that I can finalize it. That's all. That's all I have at 9 o'clock.
The meeting minutes, anyone get a chance to review? I get submitted edits for
I
September
appreciate
8th.
your edits, I didn't look at them.
All right, so let's postpone it to the next meeting then, please,
Sure.
if
Thank
you
you.
would.
Yep.
Only administrative announcement that on my end is, I had a good conversation with Robert Pomprion, and we're approaching the 5-year mark on the master plan. So I do think it is appropriate that at this juncture, we do a bit of a review, and the planning board has to take the lead on this. It's in our bailiwick, it's our responsibility. So just be aware that when the smoke clears a little bit, we have a little town time, I'm gonna start organizing a little subcommittee and I have in mind a working process for that review, and it isn't awful, it's legitimate. That's all I have. And the forest, don't forget that November 16th, 6 o'clock is the Pocket Forest meeting. And
In the Great Hall.
In the Great Hall,
Yeah,
upstairs. Okay, sure.
Build a
Anything else?
Huh?
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Good night, everybody.